You know, at one point I was using Coolio.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's Coolio? I was like, oh, really? And then I thought, wait, I don't even know what the hell that is. What's Coolio?
Our audience is fucking screaming right now. Coolio is a rapper?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I am not hip to the rap
You're like,
scene.
what streaming service is Coolio?
That's what I thought it was like a new app or something. Oh, wait, what? It's a good thing no one ever listens to the end of these shows.
That's great. It's a good thing Coolio doesn't listen to our show.
You are listening to the Silver Screen Happy Hour. I'm Chris Wiegand, along with my brother Jerome.
Present and accounted for.
All right, what are the movies we are discussing today? Well, hold on. Before we get into the movies,
We got a couple of things.
We got a couple things to talk about.
Yeah. And our booze. Don't forget our booze.
Yeah.
Well, actually, let's do that first.
Booze?
Yeah, because my ice is melting.
Okay, well, yeah, I want to crack this open. So, first of all, let me... you talk about yours since you got to pour... You got melting ice over there. Mine's not as time critical.
And normally I don't even put really good whiskey on ice, but it's the middle of the afternoon, so I gotta take a little edge off of it. I'm still going with the Blantons.
Yeah.
From previous episodes. I have not finished this bottle yet. In fact, I've only been drinking this during our show. So the bottle is surviving. Here we go. Listen. Oh, let me get this over by them. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, what do you got today?
Well, I'm surprised you went with a higher end since we're talking about sequels.
Right.
And
right.
And I actually had that in mind because we were talking about sequels, and I was thinking about the movies, and I'm like, I don't know what to pair. There isn't much alcohol use in either of these movies, I don't think.
Right.
And so I just went to my refrigerator, and I'm like, what's the cheapest crap that, sequels are kind of like, nah, especially the second one we're going to talk about. So I thought, what does Speed 2 taste like? I think Speed 2 tastes like cucumber and lime spiked seltzer from Members Mark.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna be suffering through this one. Hold on, here we go.
Jeez.
There we go.
So you tipped. So as you drink that, I'll tell the audience you tipped your hand a little bit there. My brother just took a sip of Speed 2. If Speed 2 was in liquid form. So, all right. So he tipped his hand already, showed you his cards. Speed 2 is one of the movies we're doing today. We're also doing Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And the theme for today is what makes a good sequel and what makes a crap sequel. Yep. Now, we played with this similarly back when we did our Jaws episode. Mm-hmm. We kind of tied in, a sequel there. We did Jaws 4. But that was more about just that Jaws 1 is an amazing screenplay. And on that one, we were just comparing what makes a good script compared to a bad script. So we did those two. Today is all about sequels. So think of some of your favorite sequels. I have a little fun thing we're going to do at the end. Okay. It's called Jerome's Sequel Gauntlet. And we're going to run these two through the ringer and see what comes out on the other end. But I think we should start in order of their release date. So I think we should do Terminator 2 first.
Okay.
And then we'll do Speed 2 after. Because by then we'll be nice and liquored and oiled up. And maybe it'll help us tolerate the not-so-genius of Speed 2.
Well, Speed 2 is better consumed drunk.
Yes, quite better.
But before we get to that, we have some business to take care of.
We have some bittersweet business.
Yeah. First of all, let's talk about the bitter part. The sweet part, it's kind of surrounding it. I mean, the Lions played probably one of the best games I've ever seen them play in my lifetime.
Most people, if not for the bitter part, have us as one of the top teams in the league right now after that performance.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, at the time that we're doing this recording, we went into Dallas and beat the living shit out of the Cowboys. 47-9. They never scored a touchdown.
Isn't it the owner GM's birthday or something?
It was his 82nd birthday for Jerry Jones. He is the owner / GM. And Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and those high-paid offensive players, they got 3 field goals out of it.
Oh my
That's
gosh!
all they got.
Yeah,
it was an ass
so
beating.
gratifying if you're from Detroit.
Well, especially after what happened last year when we played in Dallas.
Yeah, and
we got
bogus
hosed
call.
by the refs on that bullshit 2-point conversion thing. And so this was like a statement game. This was us coming out saying, we're not going to need a 2-point conversion to beat your ass this time. We're just going to beat the shit out of you. And you could see the anger and how like David Montgomery was running. Like he ran angry. Like everybody played angry and you could see it. And poor Dallas,
It took multiple guys to take him down when they could get him down.
So that was the sweet part. The bitter part is early third quarter, our Pro Bowl defensive end, captain of our defense, and probably overall best player.
The best defensive end in the league, probably.
Arguably best defensive end in the league. Aidan Hutchinson broke both his tibia and fibula on a play where he was sacking Dak Prescott. It was a freak play. His own player's knee just got it at the worst angle, and it just snapped it right in half.
Yeah, it was gruesome.
It's gruesome. And it's shitty because he's out for the year now.
Yeah,
some are saying within
4 to 6 months recovery time.
With an injury like that, you hope he's back for week 1 next year. Like, it's just that bad.
He did release a statement, or his family released a statement or something. He got word that if the Super Bowl, or when Detroit makes it to the Super Bowl, he intends to be on the field. So
he's going to wrap 6 pounds of duct tape on that leg and get out there.
I would hate to see him re-injure that thing.
I would too.
I would. Oh my gosh! I mean, if he's healthy enough, give him one play just so he can play in the Super Bowl.
He is a Wolverine after all.
Gosh,
so
I know
he's a fighter.
Oh.
No, but they did say that the surgery was an absolute success. So they expect 100% recovery. There was no complications, so that's good. That's a good first step.
Right.
Good first sign. I will say, though, before we get on to the movies, it's fair to say that we can blame Aidan Hutchinson's injury and being out for the year on Mom. Now, poor Sue. She gets such abuse on these podcasts. Now, let me tell you why. There's reason, there's context behind this. So, for anyone that doesn't know, I am a jersey jinx, okay, when it comes to the Lions. My very first jersey I ever got was Barry Sanders. He retired the next year. Then I got an Ndamukong Suh. He left in free agency the next year.
Yeah.
I was like, well, then I'm going to get somebody that I know isn't going anywhere, and I got myself a Calvin Johnson. He retired the next year. Since then, I've had Darius Slay. You should
not have gotten that jersey.
Left in free agency. Wait, I didn't. Hang on. Don't talk about the ending yet. I had a Darius Slay jersey. He left in free agency. I got my wife, a Stafford jersey. We traded them the next year. I got my little girls.
I think you're the jinxed.
I am. I'm a Jersey jinx. Now listen. I got my 2 little girls, a DeAndre Swift and a TJ Hawkinson jersey. They're both gone. Like, I mean, it says every jersey I've ever gotten, that player leaves.
You should have got, what's number 0's name? You should have got him. He keeps getting penalties.
He's a rookie. He'll learn. But anyway, so I told myself I'm never buying a jersey again. And I haven't. This past Christmas, right before the NFC title game, I might add.
Oh, no.
Mom bought me this.
We know how that game went.
This Lions shirt, which I love. But in jersey fashion, what's it say on the back, Chris?
Hutchinson, 97.
It's got Hutchinson's name and number on the back of the shirt. Now, it's not a jersey. It's a T-shirt. But it has his name and number on the back. Thank you, Mom. It's a wonderfully comfortable shirt, and you caused Aidan Hutchinson's leg injury. So,
well, I would just like to read or to direct all the. I mean, I know there's Lions fans all over the world, but after watching Hutch this season, especially, there's a lot of new fans. I mean, he had the first few games, so many sacks. I don't have all the stats in front of me, but
he's the sack leader right now. He's the NFL sack leader.
Yeah, he has more than some teams.
And this was their 5th game because they had a bye.
Yeah.
So this is only their 5th game. They're 4-1, and he leads the league in sacks.
all our best thoughts and prayers go out to him. And I know the Lions, they stepped up after he left the field, too.
Well, and that's what
holy
people
crap.
said. The game was already well in hand. You know what? He got hurt early third. There was the entire second half to be played.
Right.
And they still couldn't score a
And
touchdown.
No, we closed it out. So, yeah. Anyway, just wanted to make sure we got that in there before.
Yeah. They didn't pull the starters and put backups in until the fourth quarter. So, yes, it was already, I think, like 32 or 33-6 at the time or something. It was a big lead, but the aforementioned NFC title game can tell you big leads at halftime don't mean shit. So the fact that we lost Hutch a few minutes into the second half and we still shut that shit down, like I said, the guys were playing with a lot of emotion and a lot of anger.
Oh, yeah.
So you saw it with every tackle and every run that we had on offense, every time we had the ball. Just, I mean, I think it was 3 offensive plays were to our linemen.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So we played angry. Anyway, let's get to the business at hand here.
It was a lot of fun.
All right, so we're going to start today with, again, what makes a good sequel, what makes a bad sequel. We're going to start with Terminator 2 Judgment Day. If you haven't figured out already, knowing what our next movie is, we're saying that Terminator 2 is the good idea, is the good version of a sequel. All right? Okay.
Even though I have my issues with the script
actually,
and some of the acting.
I have some plot issues that we're going to talk about. I have one major issue that I'll get to at the end.
Okay.
But still, with all the issues I have with T2, it's still far better sequel than Speed 2. But we'll get to that. All right, specs. 1991, directed by James Cameron, written by James Cameron and William Wisher. Running time 2 hours 17 minutes. Budget of $102 million, which was a record at the time.
Yeah.
He then broke his own record when he had a $200 million budget for Titanic 6 years later. But anyway, that's what Cameron does. He's a spender. He likes to spend money. It was released on July 3rd, 1991, the 4th of July weekend, and it made close to $32 million in its opening weekend, which at the time, it was the biggest R-rated movie opening ever. It was topped, however, just 1 year later when Lethal Weapon 3 came out.
Oh, wow.
So talk about good sequels. The Lethal Weapon movies are generally all pretty good sequels. So T2 was the number 2 film worldwide in 1991 with $205 million. Side note, while other R-rated films have come out since then and made a lot of money, Passion of the Christ, American Sniper, and Joker would all surpass T2. If you adjust for inflation, T2 would have been the highest grossing worldwide R-rated film ever at $473 million. That's inflated cost. Until this year, Deadpool and Wolverine just passed the $1 billion mark.
My God.
For an R-rated
That's
movie.
crazy.
That's insane. You can't take your kids to see that over and over again.
No.
Like, it doesn't have what Star Wars had, or any Marvel movie has. To be R-rated and do $1 billion. Actually, Oppenheimer was R-rated, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So shit. So does that mean that Deadpool and Wolverine has already topped Oppenheimer? Oh, it did. Because Barbie was 1.5, remember? And Oppenheimer was around 1?
Yeah,
like
I think
billion?
they're around $1 billion.
So Deadpool and Wolverine, I think right now is the highest grossing R-rated movie ever.
That's crazy. Wow.
That's right. I still think Oppenheimer is astounding because that movie was 3 hours long and R-rated.
Yeah, right.
3 hours long and R-rated. Okay, so back to 91 here. As stated, it finished number 2. Rounding out the top 5 were number 5, City Slickers at $124 million. Number 4, Silence of the Lambs with $130 million. Number 3, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with $165 million. And I'm going to let you guess the number 1 movie of 91 with a worldwide gross of $248 million and a Best Picture nomination. And it was the first ever for this type of film.
Was it animated?
Yes, it was.
Okay,
Sorry.
I think we mentioned it I think we mentioned this movie before, but I thought it was a different year, so I could be wrong. Was it Aladdin?
No, it was the year before Aladdin. And Aladdin was not nominated for Best Picture, but this one
Yeah,
was.
that's true. What was it?
Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that was the number one movie of 91.
Okay.
T2 was nominated for 6 Academy Awards and won 4 of them, including makeup and all the special effects awards, obviously. The liquid metal thing was just mind-blowing at the time.
Right.
The 2 Oscars that it lost were Best Editing and Cinematography, and both of those went to JFK. What a good year for movies, man.
Yeah.
JFK, T2, Robin Hood, Silence of the Lambs, Beauty and the Beast. Okay. It stars Arnold Schwarzenegger as the T-800, Edward Furlong as John Connor, Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor, Robert Patrick as the T-1000, Earl Bowen as Dr. Silberman, Joe Morton as Miles Dyson, and a very, very small role for Dean Norris of Breaking Bad fame. Who was
I
Hank in
picked it out
Breaking
when
Bad.
I saw him. I forgot he was in it. Well, I probably didn't even know who he was at first. Well, I
He
didn't
plays
know who he was.
SWAT team leader.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, 1 year before this, he was also cast as SWAT team leader in Gremlins 2, The New Batch.
That's funny. So when you saw his eyes and heard his voice, did you know it was him?
I knew immediately.
Yeah, so did I.
immediately. And I haven't watched T2.
I was like, Schrader!
I haven't watched T2. Yeah, I haven't watched T2 in years. So
Right.
as many times as I've seen this movie, I hadn't seen it since before Breaking Bad.
Right.
So this time when I saw his eyes, I knew immediately. I'm like, it's Hank. There's Hank.
Yeah. I did the exact same thing.
All right. So when did you first see this movie?
Oh, probably at the theater. I don't remember. I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know it. I know I went and saw it. I don't remember who I saw it with or anything. But yeah, 91.
I distinctly remember the marketing around it.
Oh, it was massive.
And Guns N' Roses did a video and a
yeah.
main song from the movie, right?
Yep.
And Arnold was in the video. Like, not just scenes from the movie. It was, if I remember the video correctly, it's like concert video, but Arnold's in the crowd and he's like heading towards them to like kill them or something. Guns N' Roses, something like that. I don't know. I just remember he was in the video.
Okay.
And there was like I said, a big marketing push. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere in the summer of 91 without seeing billboards and posters. And I mean,
Oh, it's probably on freaking Happy Meals or something.
lunchboxes.
It was rated R, right?
rated R, and it's on lunchboxes.
I'm
Yeah,
curious. I should
huge.
look that up. What kind of marketing did they do? Fast food marketing? They had to have.
Well, and, obviously the box office speaks for itself, but Arnold was just hitting. I mean, we're talking, this is prime Arnold time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like Terminator 1 was at 84. It was 7 years earlier. And in those 7 years, man, he had fucking Predator, right? He had Commando. You know what I mean? Like, he was really sort of, I mean, he hadn't done True Lies yet, but I think he did Twins with Danny DeVito already. So it's like,
When did he
his
do Daddy
appeal-
Daycare? Didn't he do Daddy Daycare?
Oh, that was after. That was way
after?
after. Yeah. But he did The Running Man. Like, there were Arnold movies were huge through the 80s.
When was Total Recall? That was in the 80s, right?
Total Recall that might have been 1990. That might have been right before this. You have to look that up. Yeah, come on, you're the IMDb guy. You got it there in front of you? You could actually just give me a quick run of Arnold releases prior to
Total
T2.
Recall, 1990. Yep.
1990, so the year before. So he was really in prime Arnold time here, and timing is everything.
Yeah.
Man. And Terminator had become such a cult classic on video,
Yeah, big time.
that when they announced Cameron was going to do this sequel, and Cameron himself was hitting all strides too. He had done Aliens, and then he did The Abyss, where if you watch The Abyss, he plays with the technology that would later be used for the liquid metal, right? The water. Remember the water scene in The Abyss where that thing comes out of the water?
Yeah.
So he kind of played with all that stuff ahead of time to sort of like, test it out. So both of them hitting their stride at the right time. It was perfect timing for the movie. All right, log me.
Holy cow. I didn't know this. Arnold's first movie, Hercules in New York, 1970.
Yeah, is he credited as Arnold Strong?
Yeah, Arnold Strong, Mr.
And
Universe.
it wasn't his voice either. They had somebody dub the
Oh,
voice.
seriously?
Yeah, it's so awful.
That's hilarious. Wow, yeah, he really came into his prime in the 80s, early 90s. So.
Oh yeah, Conan and shit, everything. Terminator. Conan 2, The Destroyer. Remember that one? I remember that always being on cable when we were kids.
Yeah.
All right, are you just gonna spend the episode reading or?
I'm just looking through his his credits. Yeah, he was in the "You Could Be Mine" video from Guns N' Roses. That's the one you're referring to. Yeah, and that's the one they put in the movie, obviously.
Yeah, log me.
I have a problem with this log line.
Let's have it.
A cyborg, identical to the one who failed to kill Sarah Connor, must now protect her 10-year-old son, John, from an even more advanced and powerful cyborg.
Yeah, so the
Is
problem
he 10?
with this... Well, first of all, he seems older than 10.
He seems older than 10. He's got the changing voice. I don't know when your voice changed. I wasn't 10.
Well, there's actually trivia with that I didn't include in my notes, but I remember reading something about it where he grew so much during the shoot.
I bet.
Not just his voice was changing, they had to redub some of his lines because his voice was changing.
Yeah.
But also, he sprouted to where there's scenes where they had to have him standing in a hole so that he would still be shorter than Linda Hamilton.
That's hilarious. I didn't realize that.
And that's just during the production. Yeah. Now, granted, the production was like 6-7 months long.
I mean, we can look it up. I'm guessing he was around 13 or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. But I have problems with the log line other than 10-year-old son.
Yeah.
The log line, not to sound like Peter Griffin from The Family Guy, it insists upon itself. Like it's assuming you already know everything about the first movie, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, you're like, who's Sarah Connor?
Yeah, like what if you don't know who Sarah Connor is, right? Like, again, a log line should be something that wants to draw you in. Yeah. And if you read a log line like that, you're like, ugh, I got to watch the first movie first, Yeah. So, anyway.
Yeah, all
right. We have the beats. Opening image. Kids playing as it cuts to post-nuclear war reality of machines running the world. This is just before the opening credits with Sarah Connor's voiceover setting up the film. It serves as a nice bookend to the closing image, as this represents the future that they know will happen. Mm-hmm. So this is the known future opening image. 4-point push right off the bat. Let's get to it. Inciting incident, 10 minutes in back-to-back scenes, both the T-800 and then the T-1000 arrive from the future. This is a clear inciting incident, obviously, because without this, there is no story.
Right.
We're gonna interject inside the 4-point push here for a moment for the theme stated. In the next scene, we meet John, and we get John's theme for the film. Not so much in dialogue, but definitely in context. At the 12-minute mark, his foster mom, Janelle, says, quote, "John, get in there and clean up that pigsty of yours," end quote. He ignores the command. 1 minute later, his foster dad, Todd, comes out and says, quote, "Get your ass inside and do what your mother tells you," end quote. He again ignores this direction and takes off with his friend. This is going to be John's theme throughout the film, as he's going to be faced with these calls of duty, and his emotional shift, his emotional tug of war, the back and forth, are going to be what is required of him. Does he follow his call of duty, or does he ignore it? And right off the bat, that shows you where he is in this state of mind 12 minutes in. He bucks authority. He doesn't do what he's told. He's, I want to be my own person kind of thing. And you'll see as the movie progresses how that starts to change.
Yeah.
All right.
And I would say in that part there, they, as a storyteller, he did a pretty good job telling the audience, if they've never seen the first movie, oh, these are foster parents.
Yes.
He's not being raised by his mom.
Right, because right after he says, "Get in there and do what your mother tells you," John actually says, "She's not my mother, Todd." Yeah. So that tells you right there. He put some stank on Todd.
Yeah, I was like,
in that line.
Shit.
So there you go. Number 2 of the 4-point push, catalyst. After all main characters are introduced, and they do it pretty cleanly. It all happens in 4 straight scenes. The T-800 arrives, and then they have the biker scene. The T-1000 arrives. Then we have the intro to John and his foster parents. The very next scene after that is Sarah Connor at the Pescadero Mental Hospital for the criminally insane. We meet all the main characters in 4 straight scenes.
Right.
So the catalyst is the T-1000 goes to John's foster parents and gets a picture of him. This officially begins the hunt, because now he knows where he is and he knows what he looks like. Debate begins. If there's a debate, it's John's, because from about the 16-minute mark until the 33-minute mark, all in the first act, there's this long, drawn-out chase sequence where John isn't really sure if the cop, who's really the T-1000, or the biker-looking guy, who's really the T-800, are friends or foes. He thinks they're both trying to kill him.
Right.
So he doesn't know what's going on at this point.
Well, at first I think he assumed the cop was just trying to bust him for stealing his ATM money.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
and then he sees a biker with a shotgun walking towards him, and he's like, what the fuck? Should I go to the cop now? Like, this guy's going to try to kill me.
Yeah.
For all he knows, the biker with the shotgun is the credit card that he stole, right? So he's probably thinking, oh, fuck, maybe the cop will help save me in this situation. We don't have just an initial face-off between the two Terminators. We have an awesome hallway fight where they're shoving each other through concrete walls.
Right.
And then it goes on to this chase that originates at the mall and ends up in the LA canal system. Pretty elaborate 20-minute sequence there. Break into 2. At the 34-minute mark, John is officially introduced to the soldier he sent as an adult in the future, the T-800. For phonetic reasons from here on out, I'm just going to call him Arnold instead of the T-800.
Yeah.
Arnold reveals he was sent as protection from the other Terminator, the T-1000. And this puts us officially into Act 2, because now it's John's upside-down world, right?
Yeah.
The world he knew up till now is completely changed. All right, fun and games. One of the first orders of business is John wants to warn his foster parents that they're in danger. This is a funny phone scene.
I love this scene.
In the payphone, and it's actually spawned memes.
Yeah.
That and I see them. So for anyone that doesn't know, he calls home to tell his foster parents are dead. He thinks something's up because they're being nice to him. It seems odd. They're never nice, or at least the mom's never nice to him. The dog's barking in the background. So Arnold starts to mimic his voice and talking to the mom, the foster mom, who he thinks is the foster mom. And he says, what's the dog's name? Max. And he goes, Janelle, what's wrong with Wolfie? She's all, Wolfie's fine, hon. He immediately hangs up the phone. Your foster parents are dead. like he just knows, right? Because she failed the test. So the main memes I've been seeing are on this Seinfeld Facebook page that I watch a lot.
Really?
And it sets it up like they ask a question over the phone, a Seinfeld question, and when the mom doesn't know it, they hang up and they go, your foster parents are dead. Like if they don't know the Seinfeld quote.
You don't know the reference.
So so it's great. But anyway, so it's a pretty funny scene. Sad if you're friends of Janelle and Todd.
Well, and they actually show how stepdad dies.
Yeah. The stepdad hadn't died yet.
You can hear it though. You can hear it happen.
Oh yeah, the sound. It sounds like a knife going through cantaloupe. Like
there's a little
shoves a
sling to
blade
it.
right through his head. All right. Anyway, so in this moment, after finding out that they're dead, Arnold actually gives a praise of the killer speech, which we've talked about in previous podcasts regarding the T-1000. John says, "You're telling me this thing can imitate anything it touches?" Arnold responds, quote, "Anything it samples by physical touch. Only an object of equal size. It can't form complex machines. Guns and explosives have chemicals, moving parts. It doesn't work that way. But it can form solid metal shapes, knives, and stabbing weapons." End quote. This is perfect because it sets up for the audience what the rules are.
Yeah.
Right? What
But
they can and can't get away with.
The thing, Jesse had a problem with that. She's like, wait a minute. It can't do complex things, but it can imitate people and their voices.
Yeah, but that's not metal. That's not a mechanic. Nothing machinery. It's organic.
Yeah, details.
Details. Anyway, this is going to be important when we meet up with Sarah later. Speak of the devil, the B story. Speaking of Sarah, at about the 39-minute mark, Sarah, who has already been introduced as a character, she kind of gets revisited here, this time as the B story. She's the B story because she's going to help John achieve his spiritual goal. In this scene, they show her the pictures of Arnold, both in 1984 and present day. Mm-hmm. They also tell her that her son is missing and that his foster parents have been murdered. Here's the first plot problem I have. And this has always stood out to me. One thing that's always stood out to me about this particular scene. Doesn't Dr. Silberman believe any of her story now?
I know.
I mean, he sees
thought
the
pictures.
Same
exact thing.
He
Because
sees
he was
the
there
pictures
in the first
right.
movie.
He was in that police station.
Yeah, he left right. Didn't he pass Arnold?
He passes him.
Yeah.
He walks in and gives his famous "I'll be back" line. Silberman's only alive because he left for the day.
Yeah.
So anyway, he sees these pictures of him. He sees the pictures of him at the mall that day. The cop says, "We know you know who this guy is.
Yeah.
Your son is missing, and his foster parents have been murdered." He uses the words "murdered."
Yeah. Yeah.
We know this guy is involved.
Yeah,
this is a quote.
If I was the doctor, I would have been like, I would have been having PTSD flashbacks because I knew what happened at that police station.
And he knew all those cops.
Yeah, he knew all the cops. Yeah, so
and the cop even says,
then you see that guy alive killing people today.
He murdered 17 police officers that night. He says, men with families, and in the background is Silberman, like, yeah, I was there. Like, he didn't say anything.
Yeah.
You think he would have been like, I know, I was there. Like, holy shit, is it possible Sarah's telling the truth?
Yeah.
The kid's foster parents have been murdered, and the cop says, we know this guy had something to do with it, or this guy's involved. And Silberman doesn't even look.
Yeah,
he's just walking around in the background
hole.
like nothing. And then, right down here, you would think to the cops, oh no, he actually says to the cops, this is a quote. No, it's not a quote. I paraphrased. He basically says, sorry, guys. Like, sorry, guys. I wish I could help you out. You know? She's been getting more disconnected from reality. Like, are you a fucking moron? You must be the dumbest doctor that ever lived.
Right.
So, and I mean, I get it. And here's the other thing. I know that Sarah's like acting like she's catatonic so that they think she's nuts and she can steal the paperclip and it's all part of her escape. But how hard must it have been for her to hold in? You know she wanted to look at Silberman and be like, do you fucking see now, you dumb fuck? Yeah. I told you this guy existed. Reese told you this guy existed. Are you stupid? Now my son is missing and his foster parents are dead.
Yeah.
Do you see now I was telling the truth? Like, she had to hold all that in. You know she wanted to let that shit out.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway. All right, more fun and games. Around 42 minutes in, John wants to go get his mom, and Arnold tells him it's a bad idea because the T-1000 is likely to meet them there. He orders him to go, and from that moment, from 42 minutes in until the 1 hour mark, so a good 20 minutes, there's another elaborate action sequence of Sarah freeing herself and the T-1000 arriving at the hospital, John and Arnold meeting up there, and this big rescue escape scene.
Yeah.
One of the things T2 does right that Speed 2, and quite frankly, a lot of action films do wrong. It's a thing with Cameron. He's always been really good at this. His action sequences are fucking dialed.
Yeah.
Like, they might take 20 minutes, but it's edge of your seat. Most action films can't pull off a 20-minute action scene. Right? It either gets boring, or it's a one-trick pony, or you just kind of, whatever. There's so many different elements to his action sequences. Like the one we talked about already in the mall. It starts at the mall, then it gets into the fucking canal system in LA. You know what I mean? Like, it starts on foot, but then they get on motorcycles. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, and the T-1000 gets into a rig. You know what I mean? Like,
with liquid nitrogen.
Oh, that one's later.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so you see my point. Like, when Cameron sets out to do an action sequence, that fucker's going to last 20 to 30 minutes. Like, it's a big one. Okay, that takes us to the midpoint scene. About 1 hour and 7 minutes in, they're seemingly safe now. They're heading for the south. Somewhat safe on their way south of the border, Sarah asks about the man who created Cyberdyne, Miles Dyson. And Arnold lays it all out. He has no problem rolling on this guy. He just tells her everything he needs to know. She needs to know. Bad guys closing in. About an hour and 18 minutes in, Sarah has a nightmare about Judgment Day, and it sets her off on her mission to take out Dyson. For almost the next hour again, there is a lot of action. And yet, for all these great action sequences, we're going to now get into some more plot flaws. John and Arnold attempt to stop Sarah while the T-1000 knows this is the best chance to find them, and he goes to Dyson's place. But they all go to Mexico and back over a day and a half, maybe 2 days, and they still beat the T-1000 to Dyson's place?
Yeah, that's a problem.
What the fuck was he doing this whole time? Crawling? He got himself a motorcycle right after the mental hospital. He stole it from the cop.
Yeah.
So where the hell's he been? What's he been doing? But anyway, all right, that's plot issue number one.
Riding around the desert, I guess.
Riding around, just looking for nobody. At this point, they convince Dyson that he has to destroy all his research. By the way, there's a pretty cool sequence where they get to Dyson's house, and Arnold cuts the skin off his arm to show that the work he is doing, the research he's doing, is going to evolve into this AI machines, monster program that's going to take over the world.
I gotta be honest. This is the first time I've watched this movie since ChatGPT came out. Okay.
It's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, I almost had an anxiety attack. I was like, I mean, we're watching, this week, we're watching Elon Musk unveil his new robots, his AI robots. And I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
It's like, I saw a meme about that too. There was like a headline about Elon Musk and his AI, and then the first comment was, there's literally 4 or 5 Terminator movies on why this is a bad idea.
Yeah, and he makes a joke about it when he unveiled them. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't hear the.
He's like, yeah, they're pretty cool as long as they don't become Terminators. And I'm like, you freaking idiot.
Wow. Good God. It's inevitable that AI will become self-aware, right? Like they know this, right? Unless they're putting a feature in there that makes them dumb. But how can you do that? But anyway, all right. Where did I leave off here? Okay. All right. At Cyberdyne. So they convinced Dyson that he has to destroy all his research, right? And they got to go to his place and burn all the research or whatever.
Yeah.
So now they're at Cyberdyne. They get inside and they force their way into the lab. Here's some more plot holes. The whole building is on lockdown, right? They hit the alarm when they know that one cop is tied up and the security guard's tied up in the bathroom. They hit the alarm. It's a building's on lockdown, right? Yeah. Dyson tries to use his code. He's like, oh, I can't use my code. The building's on lockdown. Yet, the 2 turning of the keys thing still works.
Yeah.
Where he gives a key to John. It's like, okay, we have to turn at the same time for this to open. Wouldn't that be on lockdown, too?
Yeah, you think everything would be.
They use the elevators.
Especially the thing that's hypersensitive to, turning a key.
Yeah, and when they go to leave, they get on an elevator. Yeah. Wouldn't those be on lockdown, too? Then they rig the entire place with explosives, including drums of gasoline. Where the fuck did they get all this from?
I thought the same thing.
They couldn't have got it from Enrique in Mexico because A, he's not storing that shit with all those guns down below in a hot basement somewhere under the desert. 2, even if he did have it somewhere else, they don't bring it with them in the car,
right?
In the station wagon. They couldn't fit all that in a station wagon. So where did all that shit come from? It just arrives. It's just there. Any thoughts?
No.
I was hoping you would tell me.
No, I was scratching my head.
All right.
It's ridiculous.
So anyway, okay. So they have the big explosion. Cyberdyne is destroyed. And here's the now we're going to have several of these, but as an audience member, we already know the answer. But as an audience member, if you're watching this for the first time, wouldn't you be like, wait a minute, wait a second. At this moment, wouldn't the T-1000 and Arnold both disappear? If they destroyed the future making of these machines, they would have disappeared.
Well, it depends on which theory of time travel you subscribe to.
Okay, so again,
are you a Back to the Futurist?
We kind of already know a little bit that we're going to get to, but as an audience member, that could be a thought of why didn't they just disappear? And did the main characters realize, hey, wait, they didn't disappear?
Yeah, so, right.
Something's not over yet. Like, it's not over yet, right? It's not over yet. And even at Dyson's house, I think the wife says, I notated here, the wife says, aren't we changing the future right now? And he says, yes, I'm no way I can go into work tomorrow, And that's when Arnold says, well, that's not enough. Nobody can follow your work. So that's why they decide to go and blow it up. All right. More action sequence now as they have to get away from the T-1000 and all the cops as they make their escape from the Cyberdyne building. This leads to the arrival at the steel foundry as the truck of nitroglycerin crashes and freezes the T-1000.
It was liquid nitrogen. I don't think it was nitroglycerin.
Oh, what did I say? Nitroglycerin? I meant to say liquid nitrogen.
It would have blew up real big if it was nitroglycerin.
Arnold gets to drop his famous line, "Hasta la vista, baby," before shooting the frozen T-1000 into a bunch of 1,000 little pieces. Of course, because of the heat in the steel foundry, they melt and reform back as the T-1000. I remember when I was I was 16 years old or turning 16 when I saw this in the theater. And I remember thinking when he dropped that line, we're already almost 2 hours in. When he shot it, well, first of all, when it froze, I was like, oh, that's it. That's how they kill him.
Yeah.
Right? He's frozen. He can't move now. He can't do anything. And I remember thinking, it only takes a split second before Arnold shoots him. That I remember thinking for a split second, what the hell are they going to do with him? You can't put him anywhere where he's going to thaw.
Right.
Is he just going to be stuck like that forever? And then Arnold gives the line and shoots him, and he gets shattered into 1,000 pieces. And I thought, awesome. But how are you going to keep those pieces from coming back together? And then they show the heat, and the pieces are melting, and he's starting to form. And when he stands up again, I remember thinking, they can't kill this thing. Like, there's nothing they can do.
Right?
Now, my 16-year-old idiot brain didn't realize they're surrounded by lava.
Yeah, right.
So maybe that will have something to do with it. But instead, I'm thinking, they can't kill this guy. There's nothing they can do. He just fucking reforms again.
Yeah.
So that was done very well because that's a tense scene. Mm-hmm. When she's hurt, Sarah's hurt. They're trying to get her out of the truck, but all the little liquid metal pieces are starting to come together.
Yeah.
And it's already forming up before they're even out of the damn truck. It's like, move, man, get going. Like it's done very well. The suspense of that scene is shot very, very well. Yeah. All right. More cat and mouse fight sequences after that. But of course, with that comes more plot issues. So the T-1000 has Sarah, right? Has her dead to rights. He's about to kill her. He puts his little finger poker thing through her arm and to torture her. And he's like, I know this hurts, and he's digging it in there. And then he says, call to John.
Yeah, I know. I said the same thing. He could do it.
Why doesn't he call for John?
Yeah,
you almost want Sarah to say, and she says, fuck you. But instead she should have said, do it yourself? like what? What do you need me to do it for?
Yeah, he's heard her voice.
Yeah, like what the fuck? Yeah, obviously he can mimic her. He could do it himself. He just doesn't. Of course, Arnold.
And then they end up doing it in a couple scenes later.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. We're right there.
I know.
We're right there. So of course Arnold intervenes, and he saves Sarah's life, and they begin fighting again. And this time it's going to bring us to our all is lost scene at the 2-hour 2-minute mark. The T-1000 is in the belief that he has finally gotten rid of the T-800. He smashes the shit out of Arnold and shoves a metal rod like right through his body.
Yeah, so he's stuck.
All systems fail. Well, he's stuck, but all systems are failing, and the light in his eye goes out.
Yep.
As an audience member,
you think he died.
All is lost, right?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
if the T-800 is dead, who the fuck's going to save these two, right? They can't. They're no match.
Yeah.
They are no match for the T-1000. Dark Night of the Soul. John, who's hiding, and Sarah, who's reloading her shotgun, knows at this point that they're probably screwed, right? They're fucked. Yep. If Arnold's gone, what chance do we have? Break into 3. But then the light in Arnold's eye starts to come back on again.
Backup battery.
Backup battery plan. Alternate power. He opens his eyes. He gets up. It's kind of funny because Arnold's acting here is kind of, it's not funny, but it kind of serves like when he wakes up, he's like looking around like, where is he? And he's like, oh shit, I'm nailed down by this pole. I better take this pole out. You know what I mean? So he does that first. And then he grabs his grenade launcher, which has 1 grenade left, of course.
Yep.
And he he gets up, ready to fight again. 5-point finale. Here we go.
Well,
Gathering
hold on.
the
I wanted to
What?
identify another plot hole from that scene.
Oh, okay, go for it. Wait, is it...
His arm is in the machinery.
Okay. So I was going to get to that later, but okay, we can talk about it. So,
Well, they make this big deal at the end in a couple of scenes about destroying everything, all the evidence.
That's what I was going to mention later.
Yeah,
so he does leave his arm jammed into gears, and he has to detach from it in order to break free. That actually happens before all of this because
when he
saves Sarah Connor's life, he's already at 1 arm. Right?
Yeah.
So, his arm does get left behind. That's a little plot twist there for the end. I wouldn't say it's a plot flaw. Well, it's a plot twist if you want to make a T3. It's a plot flaw at the end, and we're about to get to that right now.
Yeah, yep.
All right. Gathering the team, Sarah calls out to John to join forces. Of course, this is not really Sarah, as the T-1000, who moments earlier seemed like he didn't know how to imitate Sarah. Now he's imitating Sarah. Okay, actually, now you could argue, there is an argument to be made. In fact, I just thought of this. It says he has to come into contact with somebody. He has to touch them. So he couldn't call out, he couldn't mimic her until he stuck his finger through her shoulder.
Okay.
But maybe at that point, though, he would have done it immediately, right? Like,
yeah.
Killed her and then immediately become Sarah.
Right.
But anyway. Okay. We're trying to help. We're trying to save the plot flaws. Okay. Execution of the plan. The real Sarah thwarts the T-1000's plan by appearing behind the fake Sarah and telling John to get down. She unloads the shotgun shells, one after another at the T-1000, which is actually this is a great moment because he's getting closer and closer to where he might fall off into the lava.
Right.
And she's cocking it with her one arm.
Yeah.
Blast, cock, blast, all the way down. I should say pump and blast.
Right.
All the way down to where one more will do it, and she runs out of bullets. Now, wait. That was my Hightower surprise. Sorry. So she's got him. She's got it won, right? She's about to win. And the Hightower surprise, she ran out of bullets. Or shells, rather. She not only did she only need one more round to push him over the edge, but worse, she watches him heal again. Like she did with the frozen liquid metal pieces. He just simply heals up. She was fucking his shit up for a minute there. But then he just heals like nothing and then does this real cocky finger wag. Like, no. You look like Dikembe Mutombo out there. No. And it's definitely his best punk move of the whole movie. Like, that's like the only time he is kind of talking shit is he does that, right? He does the little finger wag. Dig down deep. She's done, right? She knows she's done now. She's out of bullets. He's healed up. John comes running behind her, and they turn like they're going to run, but they know she's fucking wounded. She can't really move. They know they're done. Without anything left, all they have really to do is try to run, but he's, 5-6 feet behind them. Mm-hmm. It's over. Execution of the new plan. Here comes Arnold. One last grenade left. They see him coming over the thing. He's riding a gear because he's all fucked up. He can barely move. They hit the ground. Arnold pulls the trigger. Boom! The T-1000 blows up, and because of it, loses his balance and falls into the lava to be destroyed. Woo! Go Arnold. I remember being in the theater, man. The whole crowd went berserker when that happened.
Yeah.
The resolution, we have a nice emotional wrap-up now as they throw the arm and the chip into the lava, of course. This gets to the part you were just talking about. I said at this point, as an audience member, wouldn't Arnold disappear? Right? But you realize, wait a second, Arnold is still there.
Yeah, he's
so
the
that
evidence.
Means he's the evidence.
Right.
The chip in his head has to be destroyed. But still, the arm is left behind. If anyone might not remember that, the arm is left behind, which is why we have a T3. And I think in T3, they actually say that, don't they? That you can't stop Judgment Day. All you can do is delay it. And their actions delayed it by decades. Like, the kid is older, and it's still not Judgment Day yet. Judgment Day was supposed to be, when was it supposed to be?
97.
Okay.
97.
In T3, it gets pushed way like 10 years later or something like that. Because of what happens in this movie.
Right.
They destroyed Cyberdyne, they destroyed all the research, and they destroyed the arm and the chip and everything, but the one arm was left behind.
Yeah.
Somebody found it, and they eventually figured it out.
Yep.
Elon Musk found the arm. That's what it was. All right. So there's more on this in a second I'm going to get to. Okay. My biggest problem with the whole movie.
Okay.
Well, not the whole movie. It's my biggest problem with the ending. Closing image, the road now, right? This is the unknown future. Mm-hmm. It's the exact opposite of the opening image, which was the known future. We have maybe the second worst line of the movie in this part. I'm going to tell you what the worst one is in a minute, but the number 2 line is right here. She first starts off with a voiceover, which is fine. She says something about that she's facing the unknown now for the first time with hope. Boom. End it right there. Roll the credits.
Yeah, right.
Instead, she tacks on what we've talked about before that happened in the John Wick episode. She's got to tack it on with, quote, if a machine, a Terminator, can learn the value of human life, maybe we can too.
A lesson. Do we need a lesson?
I do not need to be preached to by James Cameron.
Yeah, right.
He just showed me gratuitous violence for 2 hours, and he's going to tell me whatever.
He's good at preaching. Have you seen Avatar? I mean, come on.
Yes.
He's good at preaching at you.
Anyway, but we mentioned it in the John Wick thing, right? When John Wick starts talking about the dog was the symbol of his wife. We knew that.
Yeah.
You didn't have to tell us that. I hate when they have to explain everything.
That's another part I hated about this movie. It was a line John Connor had early on.
Which one?
It was after Arnold got him and basically explained everything to him. Yeah. And he was sitting there and he's like, "Oh man, all these years, I thought my mom was crazy or something, and she was right. He didn't have to say any of that. Yeah. We knew it.
I didn't even include that scene in my notes.
Yeah.
Because it's unnecessary.
Yeah, that whole scene's unnecessary. I was like irritated by it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Plus he can't act.
Okay. Come on.
I mean, it was his first movie, but
leave him alone. All right. Notes on character. Blake Snyder has story patterns in his second Save the Cat book that he calls genres. One of them is called buddy love, sometimes used for romances, but also used for buddy cop movies like Lethal Weapon. There are three main elements to make a buddy love genre. First, an incomplete hero, clearly John Connor. Mm-hmm. The second thing is a counterpart, clearly the T-800. And the third thing is a complication of their relationship. That's like the third thing in this story pattern, which for them is clear. It's the future of humanity rests on their shoulders. So now when both characters arc...
I would have said the complication for John would have been that he didn't want the Terminator, something that's made to kill. He didn't want him to kill.
Yeah, but that's just one element. Like that's not the overall problem of the story.
I got you.
So now when both characters arc instead of just like the lead, a lot of times the lead will arc, and the buddy love, the counterpart, is just there to help them. But when both arc, it's called a two-hander. Mm. Sometimes there's a third person, and even in the case of When Harry Met Sally, there's four people. They're called a three-hander or a four-hander. So I actually think T2 is a buddy love three-hander because all three heroes, John, Arnold, and Sarah Connor, all arc in this film. So let's break it down. All right, so we're going to start with the T-800 because he's a machine, so he should be the easiest one, right? Mm-hmm. It's actually the weakest character arc because he's a machine, right? There's not a lot of human depth there.
Well, and he's following orders from John Connor.
He's following orders, but he does say several times that he's a learning computer.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So we do see him, for lack of a better word, we see him grow throughout the film. He learns things like hasta la vista, baby, and things like that. It gets a little over the top when he picks up the minigun and smiles. I don't know if the Terminator learned excitement. So that I thought was just done for the crowd. But then, even worse, after he kills the T-1000, he delivers what I believe to be the worst line in the entire film. I need a vacation. The Terminator said that. I need a vacation.
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, it was done for, so the audience can laugh. Ha, 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 ha. Okay. However, it is clear that as a character, he does arc. He learns humanity. Why you can't just kill people. He says at the beginning, John says, you can't just go around killing people. Why not? I'm a Terminator. But he teaches them that there's value in human life, right?
Sure.
So, and then he learns why humans grow attached to themselves, why they grow attached to each other, and thus why people cry when that attachment gets threatened. So he does arc. For a cyborg, he does arc. Mm-hmm. His tangible goal is to protect John Connor, which by the midpoint, they're on their way to Mexico. He's done that. He's pretty safe at this point. In fact, if they didn't ever return to L.A. to stop Sarah from killing Dyson, the T-1000 may have never found them. They may have never found him. His spiritual goal, which he did not know he needed, was to learn the humanity aspect, right? That there is value to human life. All right, so we're going to segue that into Sarah because her arc is very, very similar to the T-800s. She also has a strong arc. Hers is actually stronger. Oddly enough, it's very similar to the T-800s. He wants to protect John at all costs, so does she, even if that means hurting or killing others. Again, like Arnold, she accomplishes this as her tangible goal at the midpoint. They're safe. They're on their way to Mexico. T-1000 can't find them. Her spiritual goal that she did not know she realized she needed was to learn humanity herself. That human life is precious, and that except no matter how hard she tried, she's not a machine.
Yeah.
Right? She's not a Terminator, and human life should be preserved. She gets all the way to close to killing Dyson. She's got him in her crosshairs, and she stops. Right? So that's her lesson that needs to be learned.
Another pretty traumatic scene, because that was right in front of his wife and daughter.
And son.
Kids.
His son. Right in front of his son, yeah. So we often talk about the mirror image of the protagonist and the antagonist, on how if the hero makes bad choices, they could end up like the villain. Remember, we've talked about this in previous episodes.
Right.
We used examples in the past. Indiana Jones, if he made bad choices, he would be Belloc, right?
Yeah.
H.I. McDonough in Raising Arizona, we said if he made bad choices, he ends up Leonard Smalls, the biker, right?
Yeah.
They had the same tattoo. It was great. I love that choice. Martin Riggs in Lethal Weapon. If he didn't join the police force and he just sort of became a criminal himself, he's Mr. Joshua, right? In that movie. It works here for Sarah, too. If she doesn't learn that lesson of humanity, she becomes a machine mentally. She becomes like the Terminator.
Right.
Right? All right, so finally we come to John. The best and strongest arc of the film. And thus, the most frustrating part that I hate at the end. Okay, it's my only problem with the movie. We talked about the theme stated already with John and him accomplishing his spiritual goal of accepting his duty, right? His tangible goal is to be his own person and not take orders from people. We kind of get that the first half of the film. He does this a lot, right? Where I'm doing my own thing. He even, when he figures out that he can order what the Terminator to do, he starts doing things he shouldn't do. Go get his mom. That's bad, right? Because the T-1000 is there. He's acting outside of duty, right? In fact, that perfect emotional tug of war that we often talk about, where when he could understand his duty but refuses the right to do it, or refuses to do the right thing, sorry. Like wanting to save the foster parents, that's another example. Sure, it's a nice thing to do, but he puts the mission in jeopardy. He wants to save his mother, same concept. By the midpoint, he feels somewhat secure in this thinking since his foster parents are dead. He's on the run with his mom. The T-800 takes his orders. The days of him going to school are seemingly over, right? So it's like he is his own person now, right?
Yeah.
I am my own person. I can do whatever I want. Yet the second half of the film, he learns that that's not so much the truth. He does have a duty in his place as a leader. He is instrumental in stopping Sarah from killing Dyson. He's instrumental in breaking into Cyberdyne. He learns the lesson, there is no fate but what we make for ourselves. That was a quote. And realizes his place in this mission, the duty that he serves. He doesn't even want the T-800 to perish at the end. He's desperately ordering him not to go into the lava, right? This is the part where I feel Cameron drops the ball. At the end, the T-800 claims he cannot self-terminate. He has to be lowered into the lava. He gives the controls to Sarah. Why? That would have been a perfect opportunity for John to step up, achieving his spiritual goal, and say, no, he's my soldier. I'll do it. Right?
Yeah.
He should have been the one to lower the T-800 into the lava. The only thing I can think of that Cameron would make this decision is that, Sarah was in the first movie. She killed the Arnold-looking Terminator from the first movie. That this is maybe a bookend. She kills this one too, or something.
Yeah.
It's not strong enough. It's not strong enough for me. John was crying and he didn't want him to go, so he couldn't do it. Again, you're failing at the arc. The spiritual goal would have been so better fed this way if John did it. That's my only problem with the ending. It's my biggest problem with the movie, and it comes right at the ending.
Yeah.
Again,
not a big deal, but it's still.
But again, it kind of is to me. When I was watching it this time, I never thought this before. But now I was watching it for this podcast, it hit me. He's got tears rolling down his face. How fucking perfect and emotional would it have been?
Yeah, it would have been a way better ending for sure.
If he wiped the tears away and took the controls from his mother and said, I got it. I need to do this.
And by the way, Mom, go grab that arm and the gears.
Yeah, so we can throw that in the lava too, you dumbass. You forgot the arm. Again. So anyway, it would have totally solidified him as a wartime leader fulfilling his duty. I thought his spiritual goal was mostly met. That would have nailed it.
Yeah.
And they fucked it up.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
All right, trivia. Unless you have something to add on arc and other plot flaws. Did you have a note of plot flaws that you hated?
No.
Oh, we got them all out.
No,
already?
I think you covered them. Every time you mention them, I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, that too. That sucked. All right. But before we get on to it, we have to say for anyone listening, for our one listener, my brother and I both did love this movie. Like, this was a big movie for us in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, this was such a fun sequel. And I don't know. It's still fun. Like, again, watching it for the podcast, I noticed a lot more things that I didn't like.
Yeah.
But, including the ending. But it's still fun.
And it's funny, though, too. The special effects for the time that were amazing. But now looking at it going, oh, man.
I tell you.
The liquid metal guy, I mean, it's still pretty cool. I think the worst special effect that I saw was when he appeared through time travel and it burned the truck. It burned out. But it was the orb. The orb looks so fake.
Well, it wasn't just that. My problem with that is his human flesh didn't burn.
Yeah, right.
This ball burned through a truck.
Well, maybe it's just the outside of the ball.
But but it seemed like the inside was hot too. I don't know. It just seemed like his skin was okay. Like it's supposed to be human skin. But anyway, I was going to say what I noticed was the worst special effect, which I never noticed before, when he impersonates Jeanette Goldstein, who plays foster mom, Janelle, right? By the way, who's in Aliens. You know that's Vasquez in Aliens, right?
I didn't realize that.
And she's the Irish mom in Titanic.
No way.
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yes. Anyway.
Wow.
Anyway, I know from Vasquez in Aliens.
An Irish mom.
Well, not just that, to Janelle.
Yeah, right.
Like that change right there is huge.
Yeah,
She's also in Lethal Weapon 2. She's part of Murtaugh's crew in Lethal Weapon 2. But anyway, when he impersonates her and kills the stepdad, when he turns back into, not the hand part, but when she physically turns back into Robert Patrick, the T-1000. It's an awkward like step, like almost like stop motion animation, where the transition is made. And this time watching it for the podcast, I was like, ugh. With all the other great special effects, that one kind of sucks. Like, they could have probably redone that in remastering. But all right, trivia. Co-writer William Wisher appears in the film. He is the mall photographer who's taking the pictures of the T-800. As he crashes through the window. Later in the film, the cops at the asylum show these pictures that he took to Sarah Connor and compares them to the pictures of the 1984 police station killings. William Wisher was in the first Terminator as a cop.
Oh, no way.
He was not in the police station. He's the one that when the Terminator's on the windshield and punches his hand through the windshield. Yeah. And then he's got it in reverse. And when he comes out of the alley, the Terminator flies off onto the street. There's a cop right there. And the cop says, "Oh, I have a hit-and-run felony." But that's the co-writer of this movie.
Oh, that's hilarious.
He also has done some work on the Die Hard films, uncredited consulting. He was 26 years old at the time of the first Terminator. He's known James Cameron since he was 17.
Wow.
Arnold's salary for this film, for T2, was $15 million, which by today's money is nothing. But it was a lot back then. He has a total of 700 spoken words of dialogue, which means he was paid $21,000 per word, which means that the famous line, "Hasta la vista, baby," cost $86,000. Just great. Him saying the line. Okay. The biker bar scene at the beginning was not only located across the street from the infamous Rodney King beating.
Oh, wow.
The Rodney King beating literally happened the night they shot that biker scene.
Are you serious?
Yes, according to James Cameron in the DVD commentary.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. Wow.
All right, the original idea, this is another good one. I like this one. The original idea was for Michael Biehn who played Kyle Reese in the first Terminator, to play the T-1000.
Oh, wow.
That Skynet thought if it impersonated John's father, it'd be easier to get to him.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. Cameron and producers later thought the role reversal of Arnold now being good and Reese now being bad would confuse audiences.
Yeah.
So they just scrapped the idea altogether.
It's probably a good thing because you kind of have him on a pedestal from him and from that and from Aliens. Yeah.
Yeah, Hicks. Oh, God. I love that guy. Lastly, my last piece of trivia here before we move on. The model number for the Terminator is technically T-101, but the nickname is T-800. They're essentially the same thing. So whenever you hear Arnold say, "Cyberdyne Systems Model T-101," That's the same as him. The Arnold-looking Terminator is the T-800.
Why?
So,
Why'd they do
so exactly.
like
so
that?
here's my question. If the model number is T-101, then make the nickname Frank or Bill. Why is the nickname T-800 when the model is T-101?
Or Jeeves.
Could you be any more fucking confusing? Like, why would you do that? And I only learned this because while writing this episode, doing the research for this podcast, I was like, I kept saying T-800, and I'm like, wait a minute. I thought it was T-101. So I Googled it. I'm like, what the fuck's the difference? And they're like, nothing. There is no difference. The T-101 is the model number. The T-800 is a nickname.
Oh, my God.
What?
Why? It doesn't
Why?
make sense.
Why then? But anyway, that's all I have for Terminator 2 Judgment Day, if you have something else to add.
Great movie.
Now, we're going to get more into, at the end of the second one,
Yeah.
the sequel aspects, when we run it through Jerome's sequel Gauntlet. But already, the connections to the first movie are there, right? Like, this is an obvious, really good sequel.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It all ties together.
It all ties together.
Yeah. There's
Which
a lot of
brings
continuity in the story. Yeah.
Which brings us to our next film.
And we're going to get to 6 Degrees at the end of the show. So,
All right, I have to crack open my lightsaber for this.
all right, I'm cracking open a new one too. So, in the same vein as last time, for Speed 2, I'm going for passion fruit and key lime spiked seltzer from Members Mark.
Oh, which one is this one? What's it called?
It's passion fruit and key lime.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds freaking nasty.
Ooh, I like that pop, though. I guess I'm going to have to do you one better. I'm going to have to compete. Here I go. You ready?
It is better than the cucumber, I guess.
A little pop of my own.
Ugh.
For anyone that doesn't know, or maybe you're listening to the show for the first time, when I say my lightsabers, I have these tall 25-ounce Gigantor cans of Mick Ultra. They come in large blue cans. They're my lightsabers.
Well, and you used to get the Bud Light, which are very
Which
blue.
were all blue. Yeah, all blue. But these...
I'm guessing you have
are
a
little
better deal on the Mick Ultras.
No, they're actually like a buck more.
Oh.
But
Okay.
like at the 3-pack?
It all tastes
Like
the
the
same to
3-pack.
me. I'd go for the cheap ones.
I do when I'm really strapped for cash. I do go for the cheap ones. But the Mick Ultra tastes better. All right, Anheuser-Busch, now's your chance to rope us in for a advertisement.
Why would they? They're getting free advertising.
Yeah, they're getting free. They're getting us for free. Well, you know what? It doesn't always have to be that way, Anheuser-Busch. I could go to somebody else. I could crack open a tall Coors Light. Okay. Speed 2 Cruise Control. Which, by the way, it's one little point I want to throw out before we even get started. Speed 1 was all about keeping the bus going as fast as possible so it doesn't explode.
Yeah.
Speed 2 Cruise Control is about how quickly they can slow the boat down.
Yeah.
Like think about that as an anti-action. We
Yeah,
want to
right.
slow it down, not keep it going.
Right.
Anyway, okay. Specs, 1997, directed by Jan de Bont, written by Rent.
It just occurred to me. Speed 2 happened when Judgment Day should have happened. 97.
Oh, that is the end of the world then, isn't it? Written by Randall McCormick and Jeff Nathanson from a story by Jan de Bont based on characters created by Graham Yost. I'm going to go into a little bit of an assault here on the writers because the script was so bad. And I don't want it to sound too arrogant. They are, after all, professional writers, and I am not. But I will say that Jan de Bont was contractually obligated to do a sequel on the success of the first one.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have to forgive a little bit that he was probably like, you know, I want to go off and do other things. He did Twister right before this. So, you know, he probably wanted to do other things, and they're like, no, you got to give us a Speed sequel. And he's probably like, dude. And I can't get Keanu. Keanu read the script and decided not to make the movie after reading the script. He chose the movie Chain Reaction instead.
Hey, that was a good choice.
Yeah, so if you're the director and you just lost Keanu, I don't know. I guess this is what you come up with. So you could argue that the Speed franchise made and broke Jan de Bont's directing career. Don't get me wrong. Highly respected cinematographer. He did Cujo, Die Hard, Hunt for Red October,
Oh, man.
Flatliners,
Some bangers.
the aforementioned Lethal Weapon 3 that we talked about in the last movie.
So he was okay. He was.
This is all before Speed 2.
Well, yeah. What did he do after Speed 2?
His last American film credit as director of photography was Lethal Weapon 3 in 1992. So he didn't even go back to cinematography. It was almost like once he became director, he's like, I'm not going back to that shit again. I'm a director now. That's it. Unfortunately, he finally got his chance to direct and hit two relative blockbusters with Speed 1994 and Twister 1996, both big successes. Then after Speed 2, he's only directed 2 movies since then. The Haunting in 1999 and Lara Croft Tomb Raider, The Cradle of Love in 2003. So what is that? It's been 20 years, over 20 years since he's directed a movie, and he has not gone back to cinematography. Whether he's refused just because he's kind of graduated onto directing, that he didn't want to go back to cinematography, or he's not getting the gigs. I don't know, man, but he was a very gifted cinematographer, and naturally the progression was give him a directing deal. He had 2 huge hits.
Yeah,
this goes to show.
He might just be retired, counting his residuals money coming in.
Or it's one of those, did you retire or did Speed 2 retire you? Right? I don't know. Coincidentally, writer Randall McCormick may have also been bitten by the cruise control bug. Of his 6 writing credits on IMDb, that's it, 6 of them. 4 of them are Speed 2, Scorpion King 2 and Scorpion King 3, and Blue Crush 2.
Oh, no.
These are all forgettable sequels.
Yeah.
He hasn't had a credit in Hollywood in over 10 years. However, walking through the rain without getting wet, apparently, Jeff Nathanson has escaped Hollywood exile. He's actually been a very well-known and credited writer before and after Speed 2. I didn't write all his credits down here, but there's a lot of them. He has worked with Spielberg. He's worked on Disney collaborations. He's doing just fine. So somehow Jeff Nathanson's fine. The other 2 weren't able to wash the Speed 2 stink off their clothes. But anyway, again, I don't want it to sound too attacking. Jan de Bont and Randall McCormick probably have way more money than I do. And like you said, maybe they're fine with just not, with just being retired. But again, did Speed 2 retire them? Or did they decide to walk away? All right, running time of 2 hours and 5 minutes with a budget of $160 million. $160 million budget, which would be about $313 million in today's money if you adjust for inflation. Could you imagine $313 million to make a movie?
Wow. Well, they wrecked a lot of stuff.
The final set piece of the ocean liner crashing into a small town, that alone cost $25 million.
Wow.
It's the most expensive single stunt in film history.
Really?
As Jan de Bont did not want to use any CGI and literally built a small town just so he could ram the cruise ship into it.
Wow, that's crazy.
Oddly enough, it made $162 million worldwide, so it sounds like it made its money back. But with all the money they spent on distribution and marketing,
oh yeah, they ate it.
It really. Oh, and by the way, of that $162 million worldwide, only 48 of that was domestic.
Wow, that's rough.
Yeah, so that's a tank. Although oddly enough, on the worldwide list, it did land a respectable 8th on the 1997 list. That's not bad. Top 10, right? But again, like I said, only 48 of that was domestic. So the domestic list is way farther down. But worldwide, it's number 8. Considering production costs and unlisted marketing and distribution costs, it is considered a bomb by most stretches in Hollywood. We talked about the worldwide list in 97 before when we did the Liar Liar episode. That film came in at number 6. Of course, you remember the biggest film of the year, another boat on water film.
Yeah,
Titanic made $1.8 billion.
I know. I was thinking about that when I was watching this, the scene where the ship's flooding and everything, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Titanic came out the same year.
Weird.
Right?
Yeah. Titanic was at $1.8 billion. It's about double that if you adjust for inflation. It garnered, Speed 2, Cruise Control, mind you, back onto Speed 2 now, garnered 0 Academy Award nominations, though it did win the Razzie Award for worst remake or sequel. Its only Razzie win despite 7 other Razzie nominations. So it was nominated for 8 total Razzies and even failed at winning the Razzies.
Yeah.
Like, it only won one worst remake or sequel.
Yeah.
Some of the other nominations: worst actress, Sandra Bullock; worst script, and it was up for worst film.
Since you mentioned the worst, the movie frustrated me, and I don't think I can blame her acting ability because I've seen her act. She can act.
She's fun. She's delightful. I love her.
But the lines they gave her, they made her out to be a dumb. It was almost like the stereotypical dumb blonde, even though she's not blonde.
It might be one of the most male chauvinist films I've ever seen.
It was horrible, and I kept thinking to myself, man,
and her face is the poster.
Yeah,
it's her movie. She's top billing. She's above the title.
Why'd they do that?
And she serves almost zero purpose in this movie.
Yeah, what was the movie where she was the mom that they were helping the football player?
The one she won the Oscar for, The Blind Side.
She was like a strong female lead in that movie, and I loved that. I loved her role in that movie because, she was. I don't know. She wasn't a pushover.
You don't even have to go that far later. Like, before this movie came out,
yeah, she
did While You Were Sleeping, a romantic comedy that she carries.
Oh yeah.
She absolutely carries that movie.
She's got a long list of movies that the scripts were just way better.
Way better.
I hated how the script portrayed her in this movie.
I'm telling you, it's so. If I was a woman, I'd be offended. I'm offended as a man. I would be more offended as a woman.
Yeah, 100%.
That this is the lead. This is the above the title lead, the main person coming back from the first movie, and you give her literally shit to do.
Yeah.
And it's mind-boggling because Jan de Bont, whose second big film, which came out a year before this, was Twister, where Helen Hunt almost carries that movie. So it's not like he's, immune to this. It's not like he doesn't know how to direct a strong female lead. This script was written based on his story. Wow. So he does not get to walk away clean. He can't just blame the script.
Yeah.
He's the fucking director. He should have looked at it and said, look, we lost Keanu because the script is this bad.
Yeah.
I'm not going to direct my lead as she's no better than a fourth build supporting role.
Yeah, just a helpless ditz.
It's terrible.
Really.
That's absolutely
come
terrible.
on, man.
That's probably right off the bat one of the biggest things wrong with this movie. We're going to get to a whole list of other things, but that's the biggest one. All right. It stars Sandra Bullock as Annie, Jason Patric as Alex Shaw, Willem Dafoe as John Geiger, Tamura Morrison, later of Django Fett fame, as Giuliano, and Glenn Plummer returning from Speed 1 as Maurice. Terrible to even bring him back, but we'll get to that. Again, what's the worst thing you can do in any movie? Coincidence.
Yeah.
And they bring this guy back? All right. First time you saw this movie, what did you think?
Well, I can tell you.
When did you see it?
I don't remember. I hope I didn't see it at the theater. I'd probably remember. I would probably remember walking out if I did. So I'm sure I probably rented it. I remember renting it. I remember seeing it a long time ago, shortly after it came out. So it was probably when it came on video or whatever. But yeah, I just remember thinking it was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
That was kind of my overall. And I wasn't I wasn't studying film, and I wasn't like doing this.
You don't have to hate this movie.
No, yeah, I just remember thinking it was ridiculous. It was just ridiculous.
Now, it didn't help that at the time it came out, I was in film school.
Yeah, right.
I was in my final year almost. I was going into my final year. Right. So I was taking all kinds of screenwriting classes. So probably that didn't help. But when I did see it, I think I saw it on video when I was in college. Yeah. I didn't go to the movies.
Jesse
I did not spend.
I probably rented it. We had, we had just gotten married the year before. So
well, I worked at Blockbuster, so I had free rentals all the time. And this was one of the movies I brought home, watched it on video, and I want to say I turned it off, like halfway through.
That might have happened with us. I don't remember.
Because I don't remember watching the ending originally. I think I YouTubed the ending years later. And I don't remember why. Somehow this discussion of Speed 2 came up, and I remember thinking, I never did finish that. I wonder how it ends. And I just went on YouTube, and I was like, Speed 2 ending. And I saw the whole boat and everything, and I was like, that sucks. That's lame.
Yeah.
And that was it.
And the ending took way too long, too.
Yeah. We'll
You know what I
get to
mean?
That, too.
That whole ending with the ship, where we're going to get there, that happens, and then you still got to go get the bad guy.
Don't even get me started. That's so bad. It's so bad. Like, I don't know. Well, again, we got a lot to get to. So
It's almost like they did have a formula from the first movie, because the same type of thing where they stopped the bus, but that wasn't the end. You had to go get the bad guy.
Right, but
Right.
not at all. I think you're right on that, but they also tried to mirror that the bad guy is a disgruntled former employee of some sort.
Yeah, right.
You know, so they pulled that formula from the first movie.
Yeah.
But they fail miserably.
Yeah, it was
It's
horrible.
like, hey, I made a really good margarita. Now I'm going to make another one. But instead of tequila, I'm going to use seltzer water. Like, it's not going to be the same at all. So there's that. And then actually sat down and watched it for the first time straight through for this podcast.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So
And like I said, I might not. I remembered a lot of the scenes when I watched it. Like, I watched it today. So
so you just got done with it.
I just got done with it, and I'm like, yeah.
So it's fresh on your mind.
But there was a lot I didn't remember, too. So it might have been one of those things where we watched it, we fell asleep, we woke up, it is still on. I don't know.
Sad to say I had to watch it twice
So
for this podcast.
let's get through this quickly then, because everyone's tuning out now. They're like, all right, screw it. I don't need to hear about this movie.
Well,
It
no,
sucked.
you got it. No, we have to. No, it is. You're right. Sorry, listeners, for turning you off. You have to listen to this because we're going to get to why it's so shitty. Not just that it's a shitty movie, but why it doesn't work as a sequel and T2 does. All right, log me.
All right. A computer hacker breaks into the computer system of the Seabourn Legend cruise liner and sets it speeding on a collision course into a gigantic oil tanker.
Worst log line I've ever heard. We don't even know that there's an oil tanker until the end of the movie,
Yeah.
right? Like, how is that the log line? If you go to the movie based on that log line, you're like, where's this oil tanker? Like, what the fuck? There is no collision course set either until the second half of the movie. Like, we don't know any of that. None of that is on the radar.
Yep.
All right. We have sort of the beats. All right. Opening image. Alex Shaw, airborne. A throwback to Jack's car being airborne in the first movie.
Yeah.
As he's in pursuit of a villain. Meanwhile, Annie is going through her driving test. This will be so unimportant later. Normally I say this will be important later. Did you notice? They set up a lot of this driving test thing for Annie.
Yeah.
Yet that's a setup with no payoff.
With
At
Tim
no
Conway.
point with Tim Conway, which right tells itself that it's a comedy, right?
Yeah.
This is supposed to be funny. But here's the thing. If there was a moment later in the movie where she has to take controls of the boat, you know what I mean? We'd get like, oh, the driving test. It's now coming into play here. It's a setup and payoff. She has almost nothing to do the rest of the movie. She's asked to do nothing.
Yeah, and she doesn't learn anything because at the end of the movie, she retakes the test and crashes the car.
And crashes again. So what's the whole point? There isn't one. Theme stated, if you want a theme at all. After the coincidence of bumping into each other while he's doing his police work and she's failing her driving test, by the way, coincidence number one, they kind of interrupt each other's day.
Right.
Annie gives what can only be described as the closest we're going to get to a theme/arc. She reiterates her uncomfortableness with Shaw being a cop because of Jack, and that she is avoiding marriage with such a man because, quote, relationships born under extreme circumstances never work. They haven't had an extreme circumstance yet. She did with Jack,
Right.
so that made sense. How does that make sense here? They're about to have an extreme circumstance, but they haven't had one yet.
Right.
All right. 4-point push. And starting, I could feel the disdain in my voice as I go through these beats. I'm sorry, listeners. You're going to have to drink with us on this one.
You sound like
all
you're
right.
drinking a Members Mark seltzer. That's what you sound like. You got that taste in your mouth.
I haven't been this angry since we did that Mel Gibson movie. All right. So, 4-point push. Inciting incident. 9 minutes in. You know what I just thought of? Sorry. It's part of our thing to go off on tangents. Remember an airplane when the lady's getting sick on the plane? And she goes, I haven't felt this awful since we saw that Ronald Reagan movie.
That's
Okay. All right. Sorry, back at it.
Maybe I'll make her face in that scene from that movie the cover of this episode. Ugh.
4-point push. Inciting incident. 9 minutes in, Shaw suggests that they take a cruise vacation. This is the inciting incident because without the cruise, obviously this movie doesn't happen. They arrive at the cruise ship and have some coincidental bumps with the bad guy. Coincidence number 2 and 3. 1, they're sitting right next to each other on the little speedboat that takes them to the cruise liner. They're sitting right next to each other.
Yeah.
And then, while they're being shown their room, they're walking down the hallway. The bad guy comes out, Willem Dafoe, who was just sitting next to them a moment earlier, comes out of his room complaining about where his golf clubs are.
Yeah, I know.
And they just happen to be right there to hear it.
Yeah.
Too many coincidences. Way too many. All right. So, catalyst. Now at this point, we're already in script disaster because there's no catalyst or debate to propel the protagonist into Act 2. Mostly because, and I put this in all caps, they don't know they're in danger. That's the problem with this movie. If there's a catalyst at all for this movie, for this story, it's mainly for the villain alone. Yeah. It's for Willem Dafoe's character of John Geiger. It's around the moment he plants the transmitter in the cockpit when he's acting all drunk and he falls on the floor and he puts the transmitter in there. That's at the 21-minute mark. Debate begins. Again, unless we're using the viewpoint of the villain, there isn't a debate at all for our heroes. For the villain, it might be when he kills the captain. When he throws the captain overboard, that's sort of like, okay, we're all in on this now.
Yeah, yeah.
If we're going on the story being Annie's unwillingness to marry a cop...
Well, hold on. It was Willem Dafoe. Everyone looked at his face and go, oh, he's the bad guy.
Yeah. Well, okay. Number 1, because he's Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
Number 2, he's got the perfect bad guy face. I mean,
right. He looks crazy.
No, that's what you need to put on the poster for this episode. that one look he has with his eyes are really big. I'll send it to you. Okay. It's the Speed 2 picture of Willem Dafoe. All right. Again, if you're going to try to dig up some sort of an arc, if we're going to go on the story being Annie's unwillingness to marry a cop, then the catalyst is where Shaw almost pops the question at dinner and then suddenly gets seasick, I guess. Like, it makes it seem like he just wants to get out of that situation. Like, this is embarrassing. I have the ring in my hand. Now she's telling me she doesn't want to get married. I have to quickly put the ring back in my pocket. Oh, I feel sick. Let's leave. Yeah. He really was sick. Yeah, the next shot, they show the vomit bucket next to his bed. So, all right. Anyway, they could have made the debate the next scene when they're, I guess that would be the debate, the next scene where they're shopping and they have yet another lover's spat, sort of like he wants to get married and she doesn't kind of thing.
Right.
So again, now we're at this point, and if you're unsure, whose story are we telling? Annie's, Shaw's, or Geiger's? I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I think it's Annie's because Sandra Bullock's the lead.
Right.
They tell me.
And we saw her in the first movie.
No. The poster tells me she's the lead.
Sure.
But the story doesn't at all.
Right.
And again, it makes hard. Nailing down the catalyst in the debate makes it almost impossible if you don't know whose fucking story it is. Break into 2. 34 minutes in, the engines on the ship break down and the ship is now disabled. This is a clear jump into 2 because at this point now, all the passengers on the ship, their old world has now changed. They're in a new world now where they're on a cruise ship that's disabled. They don't know why. Right. They don't know they're in danger. And in fact, they're really not, and we'll get to that in a second. The heroes still don't even know that there is a bad guy. They don't even know that there is a bad guy.
Right.
They just know that the ship is disabled. The bad guy tells Giuliano to evacuate the passengers. So he doesn't even want to keep them hostage. He doesn't want to hurt anybody. He wants them all to be evacuated. Mm-hmm. So really, the passengers are not hostages. They're free to go. But they don't even know this yet because they don't know there's a bad guy.
Right.
So think about this already from an action movie standpoint.
You could have ended this movie, just get everyone on those lifeboats, everyone's safe and secure. They'll take care of this guy.
There's no stakes. There's nothing in the balance. T2, the world's humanity was in the balance.
Yeah.
In this movie, nothing is in the balance. They're free to leave whenever they want.
And what's
Fun and games.
And what's the story continuity and everything from the first movie? Sandra Bullock has PTSD. I guess.
In dating.
In dating, yes.
Not in real life where that could have been a real thing.
Yeah.
I just survived something. I almost died.
I married John Wick, and it was not, or I dated John Wick for a while, and it didn't go well.
Yeah. So now I have PTSD in relationships. Not getting on buses or cars or boats. I can do that just fine.
Yeah, right.
Funny games. The evacuation process has heavy issues, not because of anything Geiger has done, just because. Like the whole, like the boats, the lifeboats are failing.
Yeah.
Like, that's just an action sequence. Like, let's just put that in there so we can make everybody soaking wet and hanging from ropes and make it exciting. Geiger didn't do any of that. Like, none of that. That's almost like, it reminded me in Seven when they get out at the end, they get out of the car and they see a dead dog. And Kevin Spacey's all, I didn't do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I almost thought there was going to be a moment where Willem Dafoe sees what's going on outside. And he's like, I didn't do that. None of that was me. Like, you guys are having trouble evacuating this ship. That's not on me. That's not my fault. All right. B story. If we view this as a love story, Annie's B story is still probably Shaw, who would lead her to her spiritual goal, I guess, of getting married. I don't know. If this is Shaw's film, Annie is his B story because she will lead him to his spiritual goal of having the courage to ask him to marry her, I guess. This all sounds like a romantic comedy, doesn't it? Like, it doesn't sound like an action movie at all. If the movie is Geiger, if this is Geiger's movie, there is no B story. So one could argue from a story standpoint that even Giuliano could be arguably a B story since he's instrumental in helping Shaw save the boat in the end. Maybe. Take your pick. It doesn't matter. All right, more fun and games. There are passengers left behind from the evacuation, notably a couple who gave two shits about their deaf daughter missing. They decide to stay on the boat until she shows up. Also, 54 minutes in, almost an hour, mind you, Shaw realizes that Geiger is the bad guy. Or actually, that there even is a bad guy.
Right.
54 minutes into the movie. Midpoint scene. Annie, the supposed protagonist of the film, the above-the-title lead, is told by Shaw that Geiger is the villain and the people on the ship are in danger. That's 1 hour, 5 minutes in. This is the first time she's aware of any danger.
So,
I mean,
an hour and 5 minutes in, there should have only been 25 minutes left in the movie at that point. It didn't need to be 2 hours.
For an hour and a half movie?
Yeah, it
well,
didn't have
most
to
romantic comedies are an hour and a half.
That's what I mean. It didn't need to be 2 hours long.
So, now, there was the fumbling around with the evacuation where people were in danger, and she helped out there, I guess. Not really. Shaw helped, and she just assisted him. Mm-hmm. You know, as a little good woman should, assist her man. Okay, that was meant to sound very snarky.
Yeah, I'm just nodding. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's how they make her character seem.
I know, it's awful.
She's just there to support Shaw in his saving of people. Like, anyway. But that's, to her, the only part of danger is the evacuation process. This is the first time she knows that there actually is a bad guy. All right, bad guys closing in. Shaw tracks down Geiger. They have a chase, and Geiger traps Shaw in a room with a grenade. In this scenario, Shaw is the bad guy, and he's closing in on Geiger, the hero. Wait, no. Reverse that. You see what I mean? I don't know whose story it is. If it's Geiger's story, Shaw's the bad guy, right? Yeah. He's chasing him.
Right.
And Geiger traps him in a room. Okay. All is lost. 1 hour, 27 minutes in. About the time a Notting Hill would be ending. Geiger takes Annie hostage and gets off the boat, thus leaving Shaw and Giuliano behind to deal with the impending doom. So this is all is lost, I guess, for Shaw because Annie's now gone, right? She's a hostage now. Mm-hmm. The guy who didn't want to hurt anybody has now taken a hostage. Dark Night of the Soul. This is the first time the remaining passengers find out that they're on a collision course with an oil tanker and they start freaking out. This is arguably, I don't want to say it's the first time. This might be around the first time the audience knows too. They have an action sequence where they're trying to slow the propeller down, right?
Yeah.
So the audience might know then. I can't remember when I first realized the oil tanker, but it's way late.
Oh, yeah.
Way late. Break into 3. Shaw and Giuliano managed to save the tanker by sideswiping it to avoid collision. This is 1 hour, 44 minutes in, and the ship instead collides with a small town. Now that the ship is out of the picture, and we are officially in Act 3, the afterworld, right? The before world was everything's fine. The upside down world is being on the ship that's disabled. So the new world must be they're off the ship because the ship has landed into a town. Mm-hmm. So we're in Act 3 now. The ship is no longer a problem. Now they have to save Annie. That's the problem. So that brings us to what the best we can come up with of a 5-point finale. Gathering the team. They commandeer Maurice's boat. Another coincidence. He just happens to be there. And he says, I just bought a condo here. This is the same guy, for those of you that don't know, that Jack Traven, played by Keanu Reeves, took his car in the first Speed movie and knocked the door off of it so that he could jump onto the bus, and he even stole this guy's phone. He has returned. He just happened to be there when all this shit was going on. Another coincidence. Execution of the plan. In pursuit of the bad guys, they need to get him before he gets to his plane and take off with Annie. High tower surprise. This is the funniest edit shot of the entire film. Within one shot, they go from hurling towards the plane to boom, they're in the plane. And Geiger is taking off with Annie. Yeah. That shit, seriously, there's no scene of them getting on the plane. They're on the scooters, the jet skis or whatever, heading towards the plane. The next shot, they're taking off. Like, they're already on the plane. And remember, she's a hostage. So apparently he had no problems getting her in the plane to take off because it didn't require us to see it. Yes. It just happened so easily.
Of course.
Okay, dig down deep. Shaw must attach himself to the plane as it's taking off, and Annie dumps the jewels overboard. By the way, little subplot there. I think we're going to get to the subplots later, but the whole he's dying of copper blood infection, which is why he's disgruntled at the company, and he needs leeches to clean his blood, then why throw in the whole diamond heist thing? If his revenge is to crash the ship into an oil tanker to get his revenge, what do you need the diamonds for? You're going to die anyway. You have copper blood poisoning. But anyway, whatever. It's not important. And he dumps the jewels.
Hold on a minute. Why would those diamonds have been on the ship?
Well, there was a scene during dinner. Weren't they showing them off? They were auctioning them or something?
It just seems like a weird thing to take on a cruise.
Well, they were there to sell them or auction them or something. There's something in the dinner scene where he wants to propose to her, and he's communicating with the deaf girl through sign language. Yeah. The diamonds are presented there for the first time, but I can't remember what it was. I forgot about that, yeah. Yeah, they're there for an auction or something.
Well, they just made up some BS, but it just seemed weird.
They just made it up so he can steal diamonds.
Yeah, exactly.
Not for any real purpose, just to steal diamonds. Okay. So Shaw then climbs into the cockpit where Geiger and Annie are. Are you ready for the big action sequence where he saves Annie? Because he just takes her and they jump out. That's all. Geiger does nothing about it.
Right.
He just watches it. He takes Annie and he gets out of the boat, or gets out of the plane. They kind of get out onto that little pontoon, the thing that, the little thing that a plane that can land on water, the pontoon thing. Anyway, they get on that, and that just breaks off. Like, that's how they get away. They don't make it break off.
Yeah, it just breaks.
It just detaches. Good for them. Yes. Execution of the new plan. That was the execution of the plan. Shaw saves Annie by stepping out of the pontoon, which then suddenly breaks off from the plane for no reason, separating them from Geiger, who clears the tanker, by the way. That's now a dramatic moment for Geiger, is that he has to get his plane up high to clear the tanker, right? Only to then turn the plane and hit an antenna.
The way it hit it and just stuck there.
It just stuck there. Just stuck on the antenna.
It was so bad. It was humorous.
Worse, the people on the tanker start yelling, "Abandon ship! It's gonna blow!" Why?
I don't know.
He hit an antenna.
I know.
Why did they think that was going to cause a chain reaction that would blow up the ship? What is this, the Death Star? Like, what? I mean, I don't. So, while all that's happening, by the way, Shaw, also seemingly afraid of this explosion, throws Annie into the water.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, yes, it's going to blow. They're right. How he can hear them, I don't know. Which, by the way, I think I mentioned again, there's a point when he's in the water and the guy's giving him directions on what to do, and he can hear him in the water. Like, he doesn't have a radio in his ear. The guy's just yelling, "Pull the lever!" And he's in the water and he can hear it. Yeah. But, okay, whatever. All right. So he throws Annie in the water, and then he goes in after her. When he comes up, she's suddenly very far away from him. Now, get this. They're on the pontoon. He throws her in the water, and then he jumps in right after her.
Yeah.
Into the water. When he comes up, she's like 30 feet away. Like, how did she get that far from him? They jumped in the same spot. But whatever. Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's a heavy current, I guess. I don't know. He swims to her, and then he has to kiss her so that she can breathe underwater. You know, not take her up to the surface so that she can breathe. Right. He's just going to cover her mouth with his mouth. Yeah. Like he's fucking Kevin Costner in Waterworld, and somehow breathe for her by kissing her. Yeah. Then they come up for air. And if we didn't have already enough coincidences, who is there? Johnny on the spot right when they come up? Maurice in his speedboat to collect both them, and they get the diamonds. Of course. Okay, so, by the way, that tanker does explode. Yeah. The Geiger's plane does somehow cause a Death Star-like chain reaction through an antenna that blows up the oil tanker. Yep. All those innocent lives lost. So anyway, they're on their speedboat heading back to civilization, and Shaw proposes. He's got the courage now. Spiritual goal, spiritual goal, spiritual goal. And he says yes. And finally, thankfully, the film ends. Closing image. The ship has stopped. It's crashed into a small town. Stark contrast to the high-speed chase that opens the film. I was reaching on this one. I don't know. I'm just trying to grasp at what would be a closing image. All right, notes on character. So,
well, the final scene was Sandra Bullock retaking her driving test.
Oh, yes, you're right.
And then it fades to black or goes to black. Then you hear it crash. The car crash. Because apparently...
Actually, I think that's a post-credit thing. Oh, like they do with Marvel.
No, because I didn't watch the credits.
I think they're showing the ship when it says directed by Jan de Bont. Maybe. And they start doing credits, but then they do that thing where they show her fail her driving test.
But as soon as the credits started rolling, I turned it off. But it was just funny. Credits, so that puts the exclamation point on the chauvinistic bent that the writing had for this movie. Because this dumb woman can't drive. Of course, why would she be able to drive? She had to retake her test after all this trauma. And, of course, she still can't drive. I mean, she's a woman after all.
She's a woman. She can't drive. And she can't be expected to do anything during
so
crisis.
Bad, man.
We write her to do nothing during crisis.
It made me angry. I was like, I have 3 daughters and a wife, and they're all very capable women.
I've got 2 daughters and a wife, and both of my daughters would be far more efficient on this boat than Sandra Bullock was written to.
I mean, I would dare say my wife's a better driver than me, but that might not be saying much.
I've seen you drive. So, notes on character. A major problem with the characters in this film is the lack of interest. We don't care about these people at all. I would suspect most audience members don't care about these people. Now, we've talked about flat arcs in the past. Where they themselves don't really change, but the world around them does, or how the world sees them. We talked about Paul Schrader's scripts, like Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Mosquito Coast, Affliction. Superman is always like this, right? Superman's a flat arc. Superman doesn't learn lessons. He's already perfect, and he's always perfect. But the world around him seems to change. Mm-hmm. So I guess you could argue that this is some sort of a flat arc. Maybe. Because these characters don't arc at all. They really don't. And they really don't affect the world around them in any spiritual or impactful way either. I mean, what lesson does Annie learn, really? What lesson does Annie learn? It's clear at the beginning that she doesn't want to get married and that she fears commitment, as she hints with the relationships that are born out of extreme circumstances. Her relationship with Shaw started before this, so that was not an extreme circumstance, as we said. And even after the extreme circumstance, even after this adventure, which has zero emotional shifts, by the way. It's not like one scene she's like, oh, I love you, and another scene she's like, oh, I can't. You're too reckless. You know what I mean? Like, there is no back and forth. Mm-hmm. She doesn't want to get married the entire time. Suddenly at the end, when he pops the question, she's just like, okay, yeah, let's get married. Like, what did you learn?
Yeah, right after we had this, what'd she say? Traumatic circumstance?
Yeah, we just had the one thing you hated, now all of a sudden you are embracing. Right? There's no growth. Now, at worst, she could just be like you said, PTSD. She could be in shock right now, so she's saying yes to a marriage while she's in shock. So kind of a dick move on Shaw's part to propose at that moment.
Right.
When you know that she's not of sound mind, right? But whatever. Okay. I don't know. She didn't learn anything. What about Shaw's arc? What lesson does he learn? It seems all he wants is to have the courage to ask her to marry him. That's his only seemingly problem throughout this whole film, is he never has the balls to ask her to marry him. Mm-hmm. He keeps chickening out, and then he whines about it later, and he whines about her not wanting to get married. He clearly doesn't get the picture, or thinks that he can change her or mansplain her into marrying him, right? Because really all he really does is wear her down by the end, right? Like, so again, another sort of male chauvinist thing. Like, she doesn't want to get married, I'll just keep pushing until she does, or whatever. I don't know. The life-threatening journey is over, and he pops the question, and she says yes. That's what I put here. All he had to do was wear her down. That's his spiritual goal.
Right.
If we were to rewrite this, it could have been fixed. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
I'm going to blow your mind how we could have made Speed 2 acceptable. What if Shaw wasn't a cop? What if, in fact, he was like a meek computer nerd, right? And he's unsure about marriage because he's so boring. Her previous relationship was Jack Traven, right? Super cop. From the first Speed movie.
Too bad he died in the line of duty.
Wow,
I'm just saying that's
fucking dark. Oh,
I'm just saying they could have wrote that into the story.
Yeah, okay,
that's
so they
why
write
she's
that
not
in.
with them anymore.
Right. So I was like, Jesus, where did that come from? So okay. So yeah, let's say he died or whatever, and now she's stuck with this boring dude, and it's kind of like True Lies, right? Where Jamie Lee Curtis thinks she's married to a nerdy computer guy. And she doesn't want to marry him because of that. She wants adventure in her life. And then they go on this cruise, and a bad guy has taken over, and they know it's a bad guy from early on, not an hour into the movie, but they know their lives are in danger, and he saves them all. And then that is her spiritual, actually it's his spiritual arc. He has overcome his nerdy shyness and become a fucking hero.
That would have been superior to this movie, especially if they would have rewrote her character and actually gave her something to do.
She would need an arc too.
Yeah.
Right? So not just that she's with a boring guy and she wishes he was exciting, but what if, I don't know, she needs the arc somehow. Maybe she loves the exciting cop idea because she herself is boring. And she doesn't want to be with a boring person. So on this journey of this extreme circumstance, not only does Shaw man up and become a man and save the hostages, she mans up and maybe she fights the villain in the end and kills him or whatever. Yeah. And that's her like, I'm not boring. I can be, you know what I mean? I can do something in this movie.
Well, it's funny because she had more of a role in the first movie.
She was way more instrumental in the first movie.
Right? Because, she was being fed information about what to do, but still she had to do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And she had the balls to do it. Right. She was way stronger in the first movie than she was in the second movie. All right, so if we move to Geiger's motivation, he developed an illness. He needs leeches because of his copper poisoning. Also, like I said, it's basically a ripoff of the villain in the first movie, right? Dennis Hopper was a disgruntled former cop, lost his thumb. So they kind of do the same thing with Dafoe here. Problems with the script. So Mac returns. Joe Morton, by the way, who's in T2 as Miles Dyson.
Right.
But here's the weird part. It appears that Shaw only knows who Jack is through Annie. But they have the same boss. Right?
Yeah.
There's no other mention of Jack. I don't know. It just seems weird. And if they did know each other, then Annie's kind of a cop slut, right? Like, he just jumps from cop to cop. Like, this would be a buddy of his. Cops are like a brotherhood, right? You don't jump from one cop to another cop. That's not cool.
Some do.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I thought that was weak for Annie. Again, we're already talking about how bad the script is for Annie.
Yeah.
How they write her as such a shitty person that now, because they didn't get Keanu, we'll just write another cop and we'll just have her be with him, which would be fine, but they use Mac. So he's the boss. I don't know. It just seemed odd to me. It was like, how do they not know each other? How are they not friends then, right? You know?
Yeah.
Is that how Annie met him? Through Jack? I mean, I'd have to suffer watching this again to go through and see if there was a line of dialogue or something I missed that maybe she met Shaw through Jack. I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's funny. IMDb says he's uncredited.
Yeah, so he's he didn't want his name on it.
That's crazy.
Okay, so like I said, this movie is loaded with coincidence. The Shaw cop scene at the beginning with Annie's driving, intersecting, all that stuff, all the times they bump into Geiger, blah, blah, blah. There seems to be no consequence for getting off the boat. The villain even tells Giuliano to get the passengers off. We talked about that. If that's the case, there's no stakes. There's no tension. The protagonists can leave whenever they want. There's no urgency. When problems do arise, nobody calls for help. I think Geiger says something later that he scrambled communications, but he doesn't say it until later. Like, how do we as an audience know? Like, when this shit's starting to go on, you're thinking, why doesn't the captain or Giuliano or anybody call the police? Why is nobody calling for help?
Right.
You know what I mean? It just seems weird. Annie's driving test failure at the beginning is a setup with no payoff. We talked about that. She doesn't steer the boat later when it's, like, necessary. You know, all that would have been a good setup and payoff. Doesn't happen. Annie has virtually no jobs to do in this movie. Which, again, is so astounding, being that she's the above-the-title lead, the star from the first movie, blah, 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 blah.
Where she had a lot to do.
Shaw and Giuliano at one point have to have this idea that they want to flood the ship. Of course, Geiger has disabled the ship, and only he has control of things. Like the T2 thing, how can they turn the keys or use the elevator if the building's on lockdown? Geiger supposedly has complete control of the ship. How are they going to flood it? They go and they're like, oh, well, we'll set these one gauges and we'll do this one thing. How can you do any of that? I mean, outside of puncturing a hole in the bottom of the boat, how are you going to flood the ship? I don't know. Anyway, the morning after all this shit hits the fan, like the first half of the movie's at nighttime, and then like all of a sudden it's daytime, right? Like it's like the next morning. Mm-hmm. Geiger is shown. He's sort of mulling around the boat with no purpose. Like all night. What was he doing? He wasn't doing anything. Maybe he's getting the leeches were sucking him. I don't know. He wasn't doing anything. Again, Shaw can hear direction when he's underwater. Finally, the ending, which is my problem. How does that little plane hitting an antenna cause an entire freighter to explode? So we talked about a lot of these. These are obviously major issues. This is why the movie sucks. But the movie sucks, even if it was a standalone film. Even if they had just called this movie Cruise Control and didn't call it Speed 2, the movie sucks. But let's get to why we're here today. We've spent enough time dicking around. Let's get to it. What makes a good sequel? I introduce to you, my friend, Jerome's sequel, Gauntlet. I have come up with 5 points of criteria that will make a good sequel. Number 1, the protagonist from the first film must return with the same or bigger stakes the second time around. Die Hard 2, Lethal Weapon 2, Godfather 2, Empire Strikes Back, Aliens, Superman 2, Rocky 2, Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, among others, all check off this box. T2, absolutely. The future of the world depends on our hero's success. Speed 2? No. The protagonist, Keanu, doesn't even return. He's not even in the sequel. So how can his stakes be even bigger? Number 2, the villain must be deadlier than the first, or at least have the same strong motivation for tormenting the protagonist. Die Hard 3, actually, I think is a better sequel to Die Hard 2 because the villain in Die Hard 3 directly links to the first movie. Mm-hmm. Lethal Weapon 2, because the premise is better. How do you arrest a criminal who has diplomatic immunity? Godfather 2, despite the usual adversaries, Michael has a traitor in his own family. Empire Strikes Back, Vader has special news for Luke. Aliens, why fight one when you can fight 1,000? Superman 2, Lex Luthor, how about 3 supervillains that all have the same powers he has? Rocky 2, pissed off Apollo isn't taking this fight lightly like he did in the first one. He's super training for it. Wrath of Khan, possibly the most dangerous threat of any of the Star Trek episodes. This guy comes back, and he has superior intellect and strength. Where did I leave off? Oh, they all do this very well. They all check off these boxes, and so does T2. The T1000 is a massive upgrade over the T800, right?
Right.
Speed 2? No. The villain, who seemingly gets crazier as the movie goes on, really just wants to destroy the ship. He doesn't care if the people get on or get off. There's no stakes, no urgency, no danger, no connection to the first movie villain, and as a sickly dying man, doesn't really pose much of a threat. He can't even fly his own getaway plane with any accuracy. Number 3, the sequel is a natural progression of the original story. Basically, is it needed? James Bond, Harry Potter, Star Wars, Star Trek, and overall cop movies like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon can continue to have added sequels in the franchise because they're simply new adventures for the heroes, right? Having said that, Empire Strikes Back, Wrath of Khan, and Die Hard 3 directly link the villain already introduced in prior films, Harry Potter as well, and it is a natural progression to continue. Same with Lord of the Rings, as does Rocky, where villain Apollo insists on a rematch. Godfather 2, Superman 2, and Aliens certainly spark the what happens next thoughts after the first movie. Actually provide even more texture than the first film, right? In T2, the arm and microchip left behind from the first film led to what happens in the second movie, right?
Yep.
Speed 2? No. Even if you wanted to argue Shaw is a cop, so this is simply another adventure that happens to him, like John McClane in Die Hard 2, here's the problem. Shaw's not the protagonist of the first film. He's an add-on in the second film with no progression, no connective tissue to the first film. Annie is no cop, so this just happening to her again is straight coincidence with no credibility at all.
Right.
Number 4. The climax must trump the first movie's climax and leave the audience gasping with either delight or sadness. The climaxes of both Die Hard 2 and Lethal Weapon 2 are on par with each other and their first films. Again, cop franchises, this is bound to happen. The likability of the leads only gets stronger. Empire Strikes Back, Godfather Part 2, and Wrath of Khan have all bittersweet endings, sad endings, where despite the hero surviving, someone close to them has died, frozen in carbonite, or betrayed a family member. Aliens, Rocky 2, Superman 2, and T2 have far greater climactic cinematic appeal than their predecessors. Speed 2? No. Despite the gratuitous eye candy of an oil tanker explosion and watching a cruise ship crash into land, there's no victorious ending that leads audiences to want to leap to their feet, like Keanu in Speed 1, right? Keanu wins the subway scene, right? Once they're off the bus and in the subway. Shaw and Annie just sort of fall out of danger in the sequel. There's not much of a victory there. They just sort of fall into safety.
Right.
They don't defeat Geiger. He defeats himself with stupidity. Fifth and final element of the sequel, Jerome's sequel Gauntlet. Is there a strong spiritual goal arc for the protagonist? We already discussed in the Fargo episode the concept of the flat arc. You see a lot in cop movies, where the cop doesn't change much. They're kind of the same person at the end that they are at the beginning. Superman is like this. They all get a pass. Let's take a look at a few others. Are you ready?
Yep.
Ripley and Aliens. Mistrust of people, particularly androids, due to the first movie. Learns to trust Bishop and fulfill the missing piece of her life, a daughter figure. Michael Corleone in The Godfather Part 2, theme of control, learns that not only can he not control others, but that the closest people to him, his wife Kay and brother Fredo, are the ones that do him the most damage. Captain James Kirk in Wrath of Khan, how we deal with death is as important as how we deal with life. Kirk is a cheater of death and always has been. He only has to deal with what real loss is by the second movie. Rocky Balboa in Rocky 2. He earned his respect in the first movie. Now it's about making a career of this shot he had. Commercials didn't work. Hard labor jobs didn't work. He kept getting fired. Now he has a wife and a baby on the way that he has to provide for. His spiritual goal is self-sacrifice for others, not for himself, which was what the first movie's goal was. T2. We discussed John's arc already, right? Mm-hmm. The duty, accepting duty versus ignoring duty. Speed 2. We discussed all of how there is no arc, right? It's a complete lack of a spiritual goal.
Right.
So that's it. Those are the 5. The next time you freely admit to loving a sequel, whether it's Back to the Future 2 or Gremlins 2 or even Cannonball Run 2, run it through Jerome's sequel Gauntlet and see if it comes out the other side. See if it passes the test. And you'll be able to see why you like it so much or why you don't, why you think some movies suck. I challenge you, take any Poltergeist or Jaws sequel and run it through Jerome's sequel Gauntlet, and they will fail. Almost all of them. Also, have you ever noticed, this is a side point, have you ever noticed that like the first 2 movies of a saga are usually the best, and the third one sometimes leaves a lot to be desired? Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of people that think that Godfather 3 sucks, and that Return of the Jedi is not on par with the first 2. Superman 3 is far worse than the first 2 Supermans. You know what I mean? Yeah. I just thought that was odd. Anyway, Indiana Jones is another example. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and of course Raiders of the Lost Ark. Those are the 2 best movies in that whole saga.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you got?
Same with Alien and Aliens.
Alien and Aliens, right? They've kept making movies after that, and they're nowhere near as good.
Right.
You know? Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. A lot of people, not just Return of the Jedi, a lot of people think every movie after Empire has failed to live up to those first 2 movies.
Yeah. I mean, I liked Return of the Jedi, but...
I did too. And it's a perfect... See, here's my argument with Return of the Jedi and Godfather 3. They're both needed, right? Yeah, you might not like them as much.
Story.
They're essential. Exactly. The character needs closure, and that's essential. All right, so anything you got to add? What do you think of Jerome's sequel Gauntlet?
I like it. I wish it didn't take 2 hours to get to it.
Well, I could have led with it, but then our show would be 10 minutes long.
Yeah. No, it was fun, though, because, you know.
Well, that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah, it was fun doing it. It was fun. And, you know, if you're an aspiring screenwriter and maybe, you might have an opportunity to work on a sequel, you got to consider these things.
Use Jerome's sequel Gauntlet.
There you go. There you go.
All right, 6 Degrees. What do you got for me?
All right. I was going to choose the little girl in Speed 2.
The deaf girl?
The deaf girl. But this was the only movie she was in.
Oh, well,
she was in this in X-Files and shows, TV shows.
That makes it difficult.
Yeah, so I went with someone else. So I chose the 2 actors I chose. Cheryl.
Wait. Before anyone asks, the reason why that makes it difficult, we don't use the movies that we talk about today.
Yeah.
So they have to at least be in something else for us to do this. We challenge ourselves that way. All right, go ahead.
And we have done that before where you had to use the movie, but
I had to.
I just wanted to go with 2 different ones. So I went with, and both these actors, they do a lot of like action. I shouldn't say a lot. Some of them didn't do many. Or a couple of these actors, I think the first one, she's only done maybe a dozen.
4.
Oh, was it 4?
4 film titles and like 66 stunt titles. Like she's a stunt person.
Right. But anyway, so Cheryl Bermeo.
Bermeo. Okay. She was one of the what was her character name in Speed 2?
Passenger 2 or something like that. Yeah, Passenger 2. Okay. And Terrence Evans.
He was in T2.
Yes, and he was the semi-truck driver, one of them.
He was the semi-truck driver. Okay.
I think he was the tanker driver, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong.
Which one? Well, it seems like every truck driver gets thrown from the truck.
Yeah, so it didn't matter.
So he's one of those guys. Okay. So when you first texted this to me, I was like, my God, we're now doing stunt people. Like, this is where we've gotten in our challenges.
Well, so the point is to try to see if we can't connect two actors that were on the big screen within 6 degrees.
So for anyone else that knows, like, of course, this isn't Stump Jerome, where you actually just want to know if it can be done. The closest we got to being stumped is when we did those 2 foreign language films.
Yeah.
Because we found that, again, actors and actresses, it was harder to find connective pieces. So, okay. Cheryl Bermeo was in a 2000 movie called The Convent.
Okay.
With Adrienne Barbeau. Remember her?
No.
Yeah, you do. She was in Back to School with Rodney. She was Rodney Dangerfield's wife. Getting it back to school. She was in Swamp Thing. Remember that great 80s movie, Swamp Thing?
I loved Swamp Thing.
Yeah, I loved Adrienne Barbeau.
It's on cable all the time in the 80s.
I know. I had such a crush on her. Anyway, she was in the Convent, and she was also in Argo in 2012, the Ben Affleck movie. Also in that movie was John Goodman, who was in The Runner, 1999, with Terrence Evans.
Oh, my God. So 3?
3.
Wow. That's pretty good.
The Convent, Argo, and The Runner connects Cheryl Bermeo to Terrence Evans.
Well, who'd have thunk?
That took some work, by the way.
Yeah.
I had it in 4, and I'm like, there's more here. I know there is. You know, at one point, I was using Coolio.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's Coolio? I was like, oh, really? And then I thought, wait, I don't even know what the hell that is. What's Coolio?
Our audience is fucking screaming right now. Coolio is a rapper?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I am not hip to the rap
You're like,
scene.
What streaming service is Coolio?
That's what I thought it was like a new app or something. Oh, wait, what? It's a good thing no one ever listens to the end of these shows.
That's great. It's a good thing Coolio doesn't listen to our show. Anyway, Coolio was in one of those movies, I think, and I was trying to use other movies that he was in.
So I have heard of Coolio. I'll just say that. But in my defense, doesn't it sound like an app?
You know what? Coolio should create the Coolio app.
Yeah, right.
And I don't care what he wants to use it for. It doesn't matter. If it's got his name, that's all you need.
Oh, that's good stuff.
Yeah. All right. So good episode.
Absolutely.
So if you're wondering what makes a good sequel, what makes a bad one, hopefully we've opened your eyes a little bit on what works and what doesn't. And I think we proved that even with T2, as much as we love that movie, no movie is without flaws. There's always going to be plot holes, especially with action films. You know, you have to connect A to Z, and there's a lot of letters in between that sometimes fall apart. So it is what it is. But as you can see, Speed 2 had way more issues than T2. T2 is most people consider T2 top 5 sequel of all time.
Well, and for the record,
Most people.
I wanted to do something like Aliens for the good, for the better example of a sequel.
Yeah.
But still, I love T2 also.
I think the reason I poo-pooed it is because by the time you text me that,
it was too late.
I already had T2's notes done. I'm like, I'm not going back and doing another one. So T2 was the one I watched first because I have it on DVD. So real quick, you said you watched the director's cut. Did it have more issues than the theatrical version?
Yeah, there was more unnecessary dialogue. That's why it was cut.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I didn't even care to take the time to discuss that since,
I know that it doesn't and again, I have the DVD, but I've never watched the extended version. I've only seen the theatrical version. The extended version, doesn't it have a dream sequence where she sees Reese again or she talks to Reese?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was in the director's cut or whatever it was, the cut
it was
I saw,
no good?
the extended
I don't know
cut.
if I've ever seen it. It's no good?
It was all right, but it wasn't necessary for the movie.
Yeah.
She was dreaming when she was in the hospital. That wasn't in the original?
No, not in the theatrical version.
Okay. I couldn't remember because I saw that scene. And I was like, I couldn't remember if it was in the original or not. It's been so long since I saw it.
I do remember, too, I think it was on the director's commentary, the scene where he has to pull the metal rod out.
Uh-huh.
That wasn't originally shot. That wasn't originally in the movie. Cameron had it to where the T-1000 shoves the pole through him and he supposedly dies, right? And then when he emerges to blow up the T-1000 at the end, test audiences was like, where the fuck did he come from? Like, we thought he was dead.
Right.
And Cameron had it like that originally because he thought it'd be more of a surprise, but it was too much of a surprise. There was no organic way to get him from one spot to the other. So he calls Arnold and tells him, you got to come back. We got to reshoot. By the way, that makeup took 7 hours to put on.
Oh, my gosh.
At that point of the movie where his face is all fucked up.
Yeah.
So he tells him, you got to come back. You got to do 7 hours of makeup so we can shoot you rebooting, finding an alternate power source, rebooting, removing the metal rod, and sort of grabbing the gun. Arnold was on his way to Bruce Willis's house for Christmas.
Oh, my gosh.
He had to cancel that to do this reshoot. The shot of him pulling the pole out was shot on Christmas Day.
Oh, my gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Nuts.
Well, it's good stuff, man. So, yeah.
Take it away.
Yeah. Go support your local cinemas.
Keep drinking and keep watching.